What's up, Dragon Brood? We had a crazy morning this morning. We actually got up. I was streaming at 8 o'clock this morning. We did the cool preview event where we got to kind of run around a dungeon and find all the last of the cards that weren't previewed yet. And then we did this stream that you're about to see that is the full set review. So what we did is we reviewed all of the rares and mythics and then any of the common uncommons that people in the chat said they wanted to kind of go over or hear more about. We covered those. So all the rares and mythics are covered. Only a handful of commons and uncommons got covered here. However, we did do some stuff on a stream where we're going to be talking about different deck lists and whatnot. So those will be up for people to follow as well. So if you want to go ahead and join either of my streams, either on Facebook Gaming or on Twitch, those streams will be available for you to still follow up and see all the rest of the content if you haven't seen it yet. So crazy day. I also want to mention that we're going to follow up with starting to put up deck lists. So by the time you watch this, if I have my timing right, we will have just done a stream the night before where we did a bunch of deck lists, and we will be having those up as well. And then tonight, when you're watching this, if you come back to the stream on Wednesday night, it's going to be a birthday stream. So we're going to just talk about a bunch of different stuff, have fun, have a good time. So feel free to come by. So it's going to be a crazy time. At the very least, you know what? Because it's my birthday, you are obligated, every one of you that are listening to this, to hit that like button. Let's do that. If nothing else, if you get me nothing else for my birthday, you don't buy any of my merchandise, you don't do anything else, hit that like button so people see my video. That would be super appreciative. That would help me out a lot. Why don't you do that? Now that you've hit that little like button, and subscribe actually while you're there. Actually, make that the deal. Hit the like button and subscribe. That'd be a cool birthday present to get, like, I don't know, 150, 200 new subscribers. Because I know a bunch of you watch the stuff because I see it, but you're not all subscribing. So why don't you hit the subscribe button and help me out too. But all that being said, in all seriousness, that's done. Let's go ahead and watch this. This is a long stream, so you may want to just play it on your TV, let it run in the background, listen to your phone and your headphones while you're at work. This is a good 3-hour stream where we cover a lot of cards and talk about how a lot of the cards can be used, what decks they might go in, what cards we think you should or shouldn't craft immediately, what cards you should maybe hold on to for Innistrad stuff coming out. We covered so many different topics on this stream. So hopefully this is a helpful guide for you going into Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, and just let me know what you think. Okay, so first we've got Grandmaster of Flowers. It is a 4 mana, so 2 white, Planeswalker, Bahamut, which is the dragon, by the way. The history on this card is that, man, I want to say like first edition D&D. The idea is that to level up in classes, there were like 1 or 2 people that were at each of the higher ranks. So you would have to go find those people and I guess battle them or beat them to become the next one of those. And the highest of the monks was Master of Flowers. So Bahamut was I guess there's no stats for it, but the history, the way I understand it, is that to be the Master of Flowers, you gained the ability to possibly become a dragon. And that's where the whole Bahamut connection to Master of Flowers or whatever. So it's believed he was one of the last known Master of Flowers or some such. So kind of crazy, but this is one of those like super deep cut D&D things. But anyway, probably nobody cares. You just want to know about the card. But there's some history for you. So it is Bahamut, if that matters for anything for you later. As long as Grandmaster of Flowers has 7 or more loyalty counters on him, he's a 7/7 dragon god creature with flying and indestructible. So if you can get it to 7, it becomes an indestructible dragon. +1, target creature without first strike, double strike, or vigilance can't attack or block until your next turn. That is actually very peculiar, but neat. Search your library and graveyard card for a monk of the open hand. Reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. Okay, so it's a 4 mana, 3 loyalty. Technically 4 loyalty, you get to use it once. Make something not attack. So that's not bad. Keeps things from attacking it. So it can somewhat defend itself. Search your library for a Monk of the Open... I'm sure we'll come across Monk of the Open Hand later. I'm assuming it's going to be like a 2 mana something or other. this seems fine, but that's like all I can really say about it. Like, I'm not sure. I think my problem is, like, in a vacuum, if I read this card, I'm kind of like, this is okay. Hey, Stormbreath Dragon. Technically, my birthday is tomorrow, but thanks. By the way, we'll be doing a giveaway stream tonight and birthday stream tomorrow night for anybody who's curious. I don't know. This card's weird to me. I think my problem is, like I said, in a vacuum, I think it's fine. I just can't figure out what deck wants this card. Right? If I'm playing like a mid-rangey Abzan sort of thing, then maybe honestly, maybe that's where this goes. Because then you're like, okay, I can keep this creature from attacking me infinitely while I'm doing other things. Well, I'm not even sure it's a control deck card, because you'd have to be playing, well, not have to, but playing Monks of the Open Hand to really take advantage of it. Whereas, like, if I'm playing other things that can still advance the board and my opponent has to deal with, or whatever, I can eventually get this to a 7/7. It's a poor Planeswalker, but amazing. Like, well, here's the thing that's interesting about it is that though you get a 7/7 indestructible, we sadly are in a world right now where there's a lot of exile effects, right? There's several things in white that exile. There's a bunch of things in black that exile. So even getting indestructible right now doesn't do much. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this card. I think it's fine. Would I tell people to go out and craft this right now and say you're going to need it for some things? Not necessarily. You know, it's possible there's a theme deck or something that could play it, but don't know. Is, like, we're talking about, like, what are we doing here? Have Vorinclex on board, step 2, cast Bahamut, step 3, Prophet. Maybe. I mean, even then, you got to get 2 activations and then another turn, so I don't know if that's even worth it. So, yeah. I don't know. Interesting, though. Interesting card. On to the next. We're going to knock out all these Planeswalkers first. Mordenkainen. Whoop. That didn't work right. Okay, cool. Mordenkainen. It is... Actually, let me see if I could... If this is going to happen regularly, let me reshape or reposition this window for y'all. So y'all get the best viewing experience. So this is centered because I'm that guy. Not that I'm, you know, any type of perfectionist, if you've seen my content. All right, there we go. Mordenkainen. 6 mana, 5 loyalty. +2, draw 2 cards. Then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. So Brainstorm for 2 instead of 3? Like, -2, create a blue dog illusion. It's typical illusion style. Oh no, actually no. This creature's power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of cards in your hand. Cute. And then -10, exchange your hand and library, then shuffle. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. So you get your whole library into your hand. This one's kind of cool. I kind of dig this one. And I'm not even particularly like the big blue Planeswalker player, but this is kind of neat. But I will say this, though. Like, the thing that's a little weird is that we had Teferi, and Teferi didn't hardly get played. And I think Teferi is better than Mordenkainen. Being 4 mana, it can phase things out. It lets you draw every turn. Could possibly get you 2 turns for the same, like, 10 loyalty or whatever. So, in that regard, maybe Mordenkainen's not that good, but getting to see 2 cards every turn is kind of nice too. And it's not even putting them on top. It's putting them on the bottom of your library, which is pretty cool. So you just get rid of the junk. You don't have to worry about drawing it again. Yeah, that's sort of the way I feel about it, right? If your games go really long, then this card's pretty good. Like, it's actually almost a neat card to have in the mirror. If you're playing, like, you know, mono blue or blue black control mirrors or blue white control mirrors quite a lot. But I'm not the big... Man, 6 mana is a lot to ask, though, for a Planeswalker. That doesn't, like... Because right now, when we're playing 6 mana for planeswalkers, you're getting like Garrick that kills something or makes 2 blockers, right? You get Liliana that finds the next card to help you in the game or removes a creature. I mean, this does make a dog, but my question would also be, how big is your dog? You know, like, if you play this on turn 6, how many cards are left in your hand? You know, are you making a 3/3, a 4/4? Like, I don't know. I don't even know if this card fits ramp. That's the thing. Like, I might squeeze one in if I was playing, I don't know, Teamer ramp with like Teamer Ultimatum or something. But even then, like your other 6 and 7 mana things are, you know, you're playing Auron's Epiphany, you're playing Coma, you're playing the Ultimatum. So I'm not necessarily sure. See, I don't know. I like you get to turn 6, turn 7. If you're tapping out to play this, how often do you still have 6 cards in hand? You know, like I don't know. So yeah, man, I don't want to poo-poo this card, but I'm gonna give it like, I don't know, if I had to give it a rating, I'm giving it like a 5.5. I think I'd like to be wrong on this one. This is one I would like to be wrong on though, and I don't even care for blue cards that much. So yeah, consider me just being mean because it's a blue card. Lolth, 3 black. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a loyalty counter on Lolth Spider Queen. 0, you draw a card, you lose 1 life. That seems reasonable. -3, create 2 2/1 Black Spider creature tokens with Menace and Reach. -8, you get an emblem whenever an opponent is dealt damage by 1 or more of your creatures you control. If that player lost less than 8 life this turn, they lose life equal to the difference. Yeah, this feels pretty good. This is pretty solid. Like, 5 mana, worst case scenario, you make 2 blockers. So even if Lolth dies, you got 2 creatures out of it, so it's not the worst thing. And they're 2 power creatures, which is nice. If the board is clear, you can just draw cards. Pretty hard to get to 8, you know, but actually, you know, what if you played this alongside the, whatever, the other little tokens we got, the pest tokens, right? What if you put this in that type of deck? Then that's not so bad, because then you'll be able to hit the Lolth trigger pretty easy, get to put counters on it. And like, yeah, I'm pretty good with this. Like, I feel like you can get to 8 loyalty pretty easy, actually. Yeah, I don't even think you need to be tricky with it. I think you could just straight up put it into one of those pest decks, and you already have a lot of things dying. You already have ways to sacrifice stuff. You've got Plum, you've got Woe Strider if you want to go that direction. You've got Village Rites, like just a bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I think this could actually go right into a lot of things. I don't think this you have to try hard for this one at all. I think Lolth actually, of the new Planeswalkers, she probably gets played first in several decks right now. I think this card's actually pretty legit. I'm into it, and 5 mana is more than reasonable. And look at that alternate art; it is very creepy. So like, fantastic. Like this card all around is pretty flavorful. So I'm on board. This one's an easy one to sell me on. Yeah, I don't think you have to try that hard for me. Now, this one, I did see that. I actually haven't looked at many cards in the set, but I did look at this one. By the way, a bunch of these, I'm giving you my first impressions. I have actually not looked at a lot of these cards. I've been so busy with other stuff. All right, so Zariel, which I know very little about Zariel, actually, as far as D&D lore, so this is kind of cool. 2 red. +1. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. 0. You create a 1/1 red devil creature token, and when this creature dies, deals 1 damage. -6. You get an emblem with, at the end of the first combat phase on your turn, untap target creature you control. After this phase, there's an... Okay. That's a little wordy, but I get what they're saying. You get to attack, you untap a thing, and then you get a whole other attack step. Cool. Some people think this is very good. Some people think this is very bad. I caught a glimpse of this in a conversation in one of my message chains yesterday. And I don't think it's great, but I do think it has a place. I think if you're playing like a mid-sized Gruul deck, I think this could be very good. You know, being able to just get an 0-1 that you can just, you know, when it dies, deals a damage is actually relevant. Because it's almost like having a 2-power blocker. So in a way, it defends itself. It's only 4 mana. But more importantly, being able to give haste to a lot of... being able to give... Like, you play this on 4, get a blocker, plus you have your other creatures out, and then you get a Gargaroth on 5 with haste. Like, that's a real thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's no joke. Like, so I think overall, it can do work. I just don't think it's... This isn't going to win games by itself for you, right? You may not even realistically, well, you know, that's not even necessarily true. I think if you creatures on 1, 2, 3, build up your board, play this on 4, play something big on 5, and then start to set up your 6 mana, or I mean your 6 loyalty ability, that's possible. That's actually really possible. It's not that bad. I could see some scenarios where you could do it. I like it better than the blue and the white one right now. So I don't have a problem with this. I think, again, I don't think this is like blow your doors off good or whatever, but I think it's very reasonable. I think this is totally playable. I have no problem with this card at all. So I will probably put this into a couple of lists just to try it out probably on day 1. So expect to see that pretty quick. This one, Eliwick, she's been in a lot of promo stuff for Wizards over the last couple days. I've been seeing this in quite a few ads. I like the alternate art. The alternate art looks like somebody I know. Really weird. Okay, so 2 GG, 4 loyalty. You get the +1, venture into the dungeon. Fair enough. -2, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. If it's legendary, you gain 3 life. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control have trample, haste, and get +2/+2 for each different named dungeon you've completed. Yeah, obvious what you're doing with this, right? This is very much, if you're going to do the dungeon thing and you want to venture, you go ahead and play it. But the problem is, if you're not doing dungeon-y things, 2 of her abilities are kind of pointless. I mean, if you're not... I mean, I guess it's not pointless. I mean, you still get to do the dungeon and venture through the dungeon, but you're going to have a hard time completing the dungeons if you're just mostly using her to do it. So, not so excited about that. Creatures you control have trample and haste to get +2/+2. That's really cool if you can complete a dungeon. You know, so... I feel like if there is a way to do green something and do any type of dungeon completion deck, then obviously this is going to be the Planeswalker you want. But outside of that, doesn't have a lot of use. So again, if I have to give a 10-point scale on a card, I'm probably giving this like a 3. Like on a non-venture deck, it's probably a 2 or a 3. In a venture deck, it's probably like a 6. You know, so solid, but otherwise doesn't do much. And it's a Planeswalker. Like, it doesn't defend itself. It has modest loyalty, which is good at 4. That's solid. But probably the weakest of them all because it has to be so deck specific. All right, so we have a row of mythic dragons. So we're going to go and check these out. Oop, let me pull that up there. There we go. Icing Death, Frost Tyrants. 4 mana, 4/3, Flying Vigilance. That's almost reasonable without any other text on it, honestly. When Icing Death, Frost Tyrant dies, create Icing Death, Frost Tongue. A legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creatures get +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and equip 2. Man, that is a mouthful. Okay. This card's good. I was about to say something else, but no, this card's just good. Like, there's no complaining about this card. Like, what's the worst thing that happens? You play a 4/3 flyer, Vigilance flyer for 4, and then if they kill it, you get an equipment. Like, this is just... That's it. Like, there's literally no... Like, there's nothing to critique on this card. Like, if you have a friend that tells you this card's bad, I was going to say smack him in the face. But no violence. Just tell them they're stupid. Like, this... Yeah, there's nothing like it's a 4 mana 4/3 flying vigilance creature. Like I said, if there was no other text, that's almost reasonable to play by itself. And then if it dies, and I don't even care how it dies, because I'm like looking at it again. It's just like if it dies in combat, if they target it with something, you still get a equipment that's actually really good. It's an equipment that lets you tap a blocker every turn. And it's +2/+0, not even +1. Yeah, this card's great. Like, yeah, okay, moving on. There's nothing wrong with this. Like, I'm good. Yeah, that's true. You can even play a second one just to get the equipment and not even worry about having two of them. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with this. This card's good. That might be like before I even look at the other dragons, that one might be the best one. Like I'm gonna be surprised if it's not. Like that's really good. Okay. Imrith, Desert Doom. 5 mana, so 3 blue, 5/5, legendary creature dragon. Imrith Desert Doom has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. Okay, it's gonna be hard as hell to kill. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then, if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, you draw cards equal to the difference. That's pretty good, too. I mean, not gonna lie, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Makes it hard to kill because it has Ward 4, so they have to spend a bunch to try to kill it. It draws you minimum of 1 card, but possibly up to 3 cards if your hand's empty. Man, this feels like a strong reanimator target. Getting just a big 5/5 they can't kill and can possibly reload your hand. I like it though. I think this falls in the slot for me though of what deck wants it. And I feel like that's going to be the question for a lot of these cards. Stat-wise, cool. In a vacuum, cool. The problem is we have so many big, powerful blue spells right now. I'm not sure what deck wants to play this. But if we figure it out, or there's a dragon deck that wants more dragons, or maybe we find a legendary deck that wants dragons, I would definitely make this one of them. This is pretty cool. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. Yeah, abilities are good. Is it a rush out and craft it immediately? No, I don't think so. But quality card for sure. Icing Death, though, have no shame in crafting that one. I probably would. I bet that's going to show up in quite a few aggro decks. All right. So we have Ebon Death, Dracolich. Legendary creature zombie for 2 blue or 2 black. It has flash and flying, so that's really good. Enters the battlefield tapped. Sad. You may cast Ebon Death Dracolich from your graveyard if a creature not named Ebon Death Dracolich died this turn. Well, that's kind of cool. So if the creature dies, if you've had a creature die, you get to play this out of the graveyard just because. And it's flash. I can get behind that. Man, actually, all these dragons are pretty solid so far. Maybe I'm going to be wrong. Maybe Icing Death is not the best dragon, but this one's pretty good too. This one's pretty good. I don't know where it goes, but again, are we looking at some type of Rakdos sacrifice deck want something like this? Does the Pest deck want something like this, where you can just keep getting it back over and over? I mean, a big flash flying thing is actually really, really powerful to just keep getting this back. So this is pretty cool. And, maybe it plays along with the other card, with Lolth and everything else that wants to be sacrificing things or whatever. Maybe that's a whole combo-y thing. I don't know. But this is pretty neat. I'm into it. Red Dragon is... Oh, cool. Good we have the translation, so I'll have to read this for y'all. It is Inferno of the Star Mounts. 4 red. This spell can't be countered, so that's awesome. Has flying and haste. Ooh, so you get a haste dragon that can't be countered. Awesome. Inferno of the Star Mounts gets +1/+0 until end of turn when its power is 20 this way. Inferno of the Star Mounts deals 20. Okay, so that's very weirdly worded. So you pay a red, give it +1/+0, which is effectively just fire breathing like we've seen on a bunch of other stuff. But then it said when its power becomes 20 this way. Oh, okay, so I guess you can't use like Unleash Fury twice or something. You have to at some point at least spend 1 mana so the ability becomes 20 or more from you paying for the ability. And then it would deal 20 damage to any target. Weird. I don't see why you would need to do that, but cool. But the fact that it's uncounterable and it's flying and haste is really cool. I really like this. And I'm wondering, because I already had like a Gruul haste deck, which I'm going to be updating, obviously, with cards from this set. But I'm kind of wondering if we can just do, for real, a dragon deck now. Even in mono red, possibly. Or close to mono red. Maybe you still need green for ramp. But cool card, though. I do like this. This is a scary finisher your opponent could have. Honestly, this is scary. I mean, because it's one thing when there's stuff on the ground you can block. When there's just like, hey, here comes a 6/6 and you can't counter it and it's coming over the top, like, for 6 mana. That's pretty, like, imagine, like, look at, like, how more powerful Magic cards are now, right? We went from, like, remember when people were talking crap? Like, go back and watch my video from last summer when we were previewing stuff for Core Set 21. And I was all in on Gargaroth, and people were telling me I was stupid because, oh, it just dies to removal and doesn't do anything when it comes into play. And I'm like, you had all those keywords for 5 mana. And then we got 6 mana cool things because we got, like, Vorinclex. And now we get this thing. Like, this is cool. This is pretty solid. All right, so yeah, I'm in. I'm probably going to play this. Seriously. I mean, yeah, sure, it's 6 mana, dies to removal, blah, 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 whatever. But it's uncounterable in haste. Like, that's great for a late game card. No hate for that, honestly. I'm in. Okay, what do we got for the green one? Old Gnawbone. Old Gnawbone is a 7 mana, so 5 green for a 7/7. Just regular old flying. All the others have all these keywords and other stuff. This is just a regular 7/7 flying. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. Huh. I think this is the worst of the dragons. I think that's the issue. I think the issue on the, like, there's a lot of problems on this one for me. One, it costs 7. And I think there's just so much you can do in green or green-red or whatever at 5 and 6 that you may not even need to play this. Also, unless I have something that's triggering for treasure coming into play, I'm not sure what the purpose is going to be. Because if I already have enough mana to play this, do I even really need all that extra treasure? You know? I mean, maybe there's some world where it's like Magda, dwarves, and you're playing like 4 or 5 different dragons, and like, I don't know, you get this into play, you get to generate more treasure, but like, is that any more efficient than doing what you could just be doing and killing your opponent? Probably not. So like, I'm a little sad at this one. A little sad at this one. It's neat. No, Jane, even in Commander, I play a Rith deck that's almost all big fatties, and I'm probably not even going to consider playing Old Gnawbone. Like, I mean, even think about this. I'm playing Rith where I can even make like 26 6s or 21 1s and attack and make all the treasure. And I'm still like, well, Gnawbone, nah, probably not. I think there's just other things I could. Because, I mean, even then, even in Commander, right, I can play Old Gnawbone or I can play the big, like, dinosaurs and stuff. You know what I mean? So, man, I was hoping the green one would be fire too, like the other ones. But I think the green one's the worst of the dragons, y'all. Which is fine. Green has other good cards. I just don't think green gets to have a cool dragon. I think green got the shaft on the dragons. Nah, there's so many ways to make mana. You don't need to be doing it with a 7/7. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's always. I tell people something's always got to suck, right? Because there's always going to be a worse one, right? Some dude graduated last in doctorate college, and he's still going to be called doctor. You know what I mean? Like, just the way it goes. All right. Book of the Exalted Deeds. It's a legendary artifact. White, white, white. So 3 white mana. At the beginning of your end step, If you gained 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. 3 white, tap it, exile the book, put an enlighten counter on target angel, it gains. You can't lose the game, and your opponent can't win the game. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't necessarily care about the second ability that much unless, like, I'm almost using that as a reactive ability, right? Like, if my opponent's doing something I think they might be able to win the game, or, I don't know, maybe we commit to blocking and then they Embercleave, and I'm like, great, I'm just going to make it where I can't lose the game, with something that didn't block that turn. But I do like the first ability. It does cost 3, which is kind of like the weird sweet spot for angel decks, for some of the life gain decks, right? There's kind of a few things jamming up the 3 mana spot. So it is costed correctly to make it a little bit difficult to play. But I do like the fact that you can get angels. I mean, you can play a weird deck that has like this. What is it? The Valkyrie, Griffin Airy, whatever. And just every time you're gaining life, every turn, just getting more and more tokens. That could be kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. There's something here. This card will definitely get played, but I'm not over the moon about it. But I do think there is a place for this card. The second ability, I think, is a little bit of like a it's a little bit of a trap, right? You're gonna sacrifice your book. You're gonna give something the angel ability, but like, they can still kill it just the same. It just buys you time if they don't have a removal card. If it counted by 4s and made a 4/4 instead, it would fit probably. But I think as making 3/3s is fine. I think you can't go too crazy with it. I think this is about right. All right, I'll speed this up a little bit because we are going kind of slow. I'm talking too much about every card. These cards are sweet though. This set has a lot of cool stuff. Demi-Lich. 4 blue, which means you really have to be playing blue to play this card. Skeleton Wizard. This spell costs 1 blue less to cast for each instant or sorcery spell you've cast this turn. Alright, so you can make it cheaper. Whenever Demi-Lich attacks, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Copy it. You may cast a copy. That's pretty sweet. You may cast Demi-Lich from your graveyard by exiling 4 instants and or sorcery cards from your graveyard, in addition to paying its other costs. What am I trying to do with this? I feel like there's 2 options. You could either just play it as a reasonable card in your blue, kind of slow, mid-rangey, control-y kind of deck, or you could play something kind of a proactive bounce sort of thing, and then you're getting to keep bouncing and keep your opponent's stuff off the field while you're playing like this and Brazen Borrowers and, I don't know, Insubstantiate and stuff like that. Like, could maybe go into that type of deck. Granted, that deck would suck against non-creature things or whatever, but maybe. This feels like another one where, like, it's neat. I just don't know. Yeah, see, I don't think it's quite Arclight Phoenix. Because Arclight Phoenix is just like, you just play spells that are already doing a cool thing, and you got a Phoenix. Like this, you play your cool spells. This doesn't necessarily do anything. Like, you can remove stuff and put it back into play, but it doesn't have haste. It's bigger. It's a 4/3 instead of a 3/2. But it definitely is going to play. Like, let me say this too. Like, when you're looking at cards, try not to compare them to old cards, because that's how people end up in traps, right? I see too many people say, this is the new XYZ. And I see that every single set. Oh, this is like the new X. And I'm like, no, these cards are not the same. They do not play the same. The decks they go in will not be the same. You're going to waste resources, money, and cards trying to build decks that are similar to the old decks, because these cards are not similar, right? It's yeah, everything about these cards is different. Just like Stormbreath Knight, right? It doesn't fly, so that's a problem, right? It doesn't automatically come into play from you playing other spells, so that's a problem. It doesn't have haste, so that's a problem. So comparing this to Arclight Phoenix, your deck builds will be significantly different. Plus, Arclight Phoenix was also 1 red if you did need to cast it, so you could play it in a blue-red deck or red other stuff deck if you wanted to. You can't necessarily do that with the Demi-Lich. Like, you're going to have to be committed to blue or be mostly blue with a touch of something else to really play this card, right? So they are definitely going to be significantly different. So don't make that trap. I do think the card is still playable. Don't get me wrong, but not in an Arclight Phoenix way. I think those are going to be completely different types of decks. If that's a word of advice I could give people, maybe that's the biggest one, is don't let new cards just in your head become new version of old card. Because I think people just do that too often, and it just leads you down a bad road. All right, Asareric, Lord of Undeath. Yeah, this is all in another language, by the way. I apologize. I will read the text for you, though. It is 2 colorless and a black, legendary creature, zombie wizard. When Asareric enters the battlefield, if you didn't complete Tome of Annihilation, return Asareric to its owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. Whenever Asareric attacks, for each opponent, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless the defending player sacrifices a creature. Okay, so let me break this down. It really has 2 parts going on here. The first is, when it enters the battlefield, if you haven't already done the Tomb of Annihilation, which is one of the dungeons, then you return it to your owner's hand and you venture. So basically every turn, well, honestly, if you have 6 mana, it could be twice in a turn. 9 mana could be 3 times in a turn. You can just venture through Tome of Annihilation, which is kind of cool. This is a way you can just keep playing a card over, and just keep venturing through the dungeon. So that's kind of cool. And then whenever it attacks, if you actually do get it to stay on the battlefield, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each opponent. So obviously in Commander, you would make multiples. For 1-on-1, you're just making 1 every turn. But you don't get 1 if your opponent sacrifices a creature. So this is actually pretty cool. This is a 5/5 for 3, sort of, right? It's really a 3 mana. It's a 3 mana card that says venture into the dungeon. And then you do that, and it says venture into the dungeon until you've completed Tomb of Annihilation. Then you get a 3 mana 5/5. So I'm kind of into it. I think this is cool. I think if you're building around the dungeon mechanic, maybe we're playing green-black, and you want to play this and Eliwick and some other stuff, then maybe that's possible. It is only 1 black mana on the cost, so it does make it worth it to play it. So I'm down. I think this card will have a home. I think it's one of those ones you could play 3 copies maybe in a deck, and then you just get to where you're hoping to play it multiple times and venture to the dungeon. Or if you have nothing else to do with your mana that turn, you can at least venture while you're waiting to get to the 5/5 point. So I'm kind of cool with it. It's another one that if I had to just rate it in a vacuum, probably like a 3 or 4. But in an actual specific deck for venturing that can sustain it, I don't know, maybe it's like a 6. I think that's going to be the case with a lot of cards in this set. There's a lot of quirky things happening here. All right, we're going to look at Flame Skull next. Flame Skull is a 3 mana, so 1 colorless, red, 3/1 creature skeleton. So we're getting a lot of skeletons in this set. Flying, Flame Skull can't block, so 3/1 that can't block. And then it has rejuvenation. When Flame Skull dies, you exile it. If you do, you exile the top card of your library. And then until your next turn, you can play 1 of those cards. Oh, so that's neat. All right, so it's a 3/1 that can't block. So you're playing 3 for a 3/1 flyer, which is fine. And then when it dies, you exile, and then you get your choice effectively. You could either replay the Flame Skull, or you can play whatever the top card is. You only get to play 1, though. So even if you had mana, you couldn't play both. This is interesting that this is a mythic. This feels more like a rare to me than a mythic. But you do get the option of playing an additional card. So late in the game, that could be pretty good if you have a lot of mana. But if you choose not to play the Flame Skull, that's your one shot, right? You don't get to play Flame Skull again. Yeah. So, I guess it just depends on how bad you need a creature or you need the spell. But it's cool that it at least gives you the option, because worst case scenario, you can just say, okay, cool, I have a 3/1 flyer again. It's just going to get going next turn. How do you feel about it? You know? Here's another interesting thing. Well, because it's part of the ability, you're fine. I was just thinking, like, could you actually get in a situation where if they kill it on their turn and you can't play the Flame Skull? But it seems like since it's part of the ability, you'll still be able to play it, so that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. This card's... I like it, but I feel like it's more of a rare than a mythic. I mean, I could see a world where a red or even red-green, red-black aggro deck might want this, and it's probably fine, but I think it's more of a rare level card. So I don't know how I feel about that one. That one's interesting. It's a different space for sure, but we'll see. All right. Tarask. This card I did see people talking about on Twitter because people were disappointed Tarask wasn't bigger. But I kind of feel like this is one of those things like in D&D that your DMs just sort of throw at you to have something big to fight. So, like, it's achievable, just scary as hell. So, you know. But Tarask, it's a 6 green legendary creature dinosaur. When Tarask enters the battlefield, if it was cast, it also gets haste and ward 10. Whenever Tarask attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. So if you play it from your hand, or actually if it's just cast, I didn't even say from hand, it's just if it's cast, it gets haste and ward 10. It doesn't have trample or anything, so can still be chump blocked by stuff. Whenever it attacks, though, it does get to fight a thing. So that's also pretty cool. And it's a 10/10. I guess the question is there a spot I think we could play this in Constructed? I don't know. 9's a kind of a lot. Like, 7 we can get to pretty regularly. Like, you can get to 9 in the latest of stages, but, like, once you're over 7, it's kind of like, how viable is this card? Now, for Commander, I'm all about this card. I'm, yeah, absolutely playing this card. I mean, having a thing that's going to be hard for the opponent to remove without sweeping the board, and I get to fight something every turn, and it's a big old body, like, yeah, that's great. But outside of that, Tarask, unfortunately, I think this is a fun kitchen table, commander, casual type mythic, but nothing for the 60 card players, I don't believe. If you have a way to trick some stuff into play, sure, but I think that's about the most we could say about it. Let me refresh this too and see if anything else got previewed. No, we're 278 of 281, so I think we've seen most of the cards we're going to see. All right, let's bring this up. This is a new one. They don't have the text in here yet, but I can just read the card itself. It's a Loyal Warhound, 1 colorless and a white, 3/1 vigilance. When Loyal Warhound enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for a basic plains card, put it into your hand, tap, or put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This card, awesome. We found this earlier in the preview game we were playing, and I think it's a good card. I like it because, 1, it's a 3/1 for 2 with vigilance, which is solid stat-wise. 1 toughness sucks, but yeah. It is a dog, which is relevant for 3 more months, because we do still have dog decks or whatever, and that's possible. Also, the fact that if you're behind, or say you're on the draw, you could play this before playing your land for the turn, and basically steal, break serve, and steal back. So that's actually pretty sweet, too. Overall, it's a pretty solid card. I think it is a callback to Knight of the White Orchid, and White likes those type of abilities. So, yeah, good card. I don't have a lot else to say about this one. This one's totally fine. I'm about it. True Polymorph. All right. Try to get these adjusted there for you. All right. True Polymorph. 4, blue, instant. Target artifact or creature becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature. Yeah, all right. Like, I don't know. It's one of you, like, you read the words and go, there you go. It does the thing. There's not a lot of secret to it. It just does what it does. If you like cloning things, great. If you have a combo and you want to be able to make extra copies of artifacts or something that you need, this gives you ability to copy stuff. So maybe you can duplicate it and make your combo smoother. Cool. But yeah, this card's fine. Like not much else. Like card's good. Would I go out rushing to craft it? No, you probably need a specific type of deck for it, but it's fine. Book of Vile Darkness. This is a thing from Forgotten Realms for a while. 3 black. I wonder if this is going to be a cycle. I have a feeling it is. Legendary artifact. At the beginning of your instep, if you lost 2 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Tap and exile Book of Vile Darkness and artifacts you control named Eye of Vecna and Hand of Vecna. Create a Vecna legendary 8/8 black zombie god creature token with indestructible. It gains all triggered abilities of the exiled cards. Oh boy. All right, so just at its core, at your instep, if you lost life, you get a 2/2 black zombie. That's fine by itself. The other part, a little tough because it's a kind of build your own Voltron sort of thing. And you got to have the book, you got to have the eye, and you got to have the hand of Vecna. Like all of those things to get the 8/8 legendary creature indestructible. Somebody's going to build the deck. I mean, I'm sure at some point I will build the deck for one of these videos on the YouTube channel, but it's cool. It has, I mean, I get why it's mythic. It's story, it's important. It's key things from Forgotten Realms. The first ability, maybe, especially, and I will say this about the first ability. If we end up in either of the Innistrad sets coming up, having a zombie theme or a way that we can lose life to get an ability or whatever, this could be pretty cool in those type of decks. Because those decks are already heavy in black, so could be pretty cool. If that's the case, then so maybe if you can get Book of Vile Darkness cheap, I wouldn't necessarily spend resources on it immediately in Arena. But if you could get this cheap, you know, it's down to a couple bucks. Maybe you snag a couple of them and just see what happens with the Innistrad sets and take a soft gamble. Because if it ends up being a thing, then these could easily end up being, you know, $15 mythics. If it ends up being a key part of those zombie decks. If not, well, you just have a $2 mythic, $3 mythic, and you have what you have. You know what I mean? So that's sort of how I feel about it. I don't think it's necessarily going to be great out of the gates, but it has potential to do more later. And I'm willing to take a small gamble on it. All right, this one's another one. It's funny, every time I see Senior on a card, I think about the old Phyrexian Plague Lords. Because I had some, I think, Spanish ones that were Senior Phyrexiano, which was awesome. But anyway, Hobgoblin Bandit Leader. 1 red. It's a Goblin Rogue. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. Red and tap it. Hobgoblin Bandit Leader deals damage equal to the amount of goblins that entered the battlefield under your control this turn to any target. Don't know if this was played in Historic or not, because, you know, goblins are still a thing, and this is another thing to pump goblins. We really didn't have anything for Standard that pumped goblins, so this is kind of neat. You still have this, and you would still have Heraldic Banner, so that could be reasonable. If it's something you want to do. It is a 2/3, so it's not a bad size. It's not the traditional 2/2. And it does get to kill things. Though it only kills things for the goblins that came into play that turn. So that's a little less exciting. So overall, not that excited about this card. I don't think there's enough. Maybe I'll have to go back and look. Off the top of my head, I can't think of enough qualities goblins that make me really want to play this. I think I would need some, maybe even one more thing that pumps my goblins pretty regularly to make it reasonable. But again, in something like Brawl, Historic, maybe there's room for this card. Maybe. But not too excited about that one myself. Long Rest. I've also seen this one. So, Long Rest, X, green. Sorcery, return X target cards with different mana values from your graveyard to your hand. If 8 or more were returned to your hand this way, your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. Exile long rest. The problem here is, one, it has to be 11 mana, because it has to be at least 8. Or X has to at least be 8. If 8 or more cards were returned, which means you have to have 8 different costs in your graveyard. 0 is technically also a cost, so you could return a land. But you need it to be basically 0 to 7 to get this whole thing. And I don't think that's going to happen almost ever for people. Again, Commander, maybe it'll happen every once in a while. Getting your life total reset's kind of nice. But, yeah, I don't know. This is like Seasons Past, but not as good. It's like Seasons Past. Like, this is weird to say, right? It's like Seasons Past with an upside, but you'll almost never see the upside, right? It's almost like when people are making an argument, like, but the upside is way up here. Like, yeah, technically, but when are we going to see that? In that, like, 1% of games we play? Like, I don't know. Maybe you still play it, though, because, I mean, even for 6, you can return, like, 3 things, and that's pretty cool. So you could just play it for what it is, just you'll never realize the upside of it. But I'm kind of still okay with that, right? If I just pay, let's say even 7, and I can return 4 different things to my hand, that's probably still worth 7 mana. So I'm kind of okay with it just for the ability itself, but just knowing that we're never going to actually get the reset life total off of it. All right, going to Teleportation Circle. This is 3 and a white. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control. Then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Yeah, this is fine. I think if you find a deck that just has ETB triggers that you really want, yeah, this is something you can probably build around too. Also, there's also weird things too where you have stuff that like, that has learn, right? You could just keep flickering a thing that learns and just keep getting cards every turn. So like that's an option too. So yeah, nothing wrong with this card at all. It's pretty straightforward in what it does. Mind Flayer, which pretty much every D&D player hates. 3 blue for a 3/3. When Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. And now it'll be a card that Magic players also hate. Yeah, this is just a solid card. I don't see anything wrong with this at all. I think if you were already playing stuff like a Crow and War and whatnot, so why would you not play this? I mean, yeah, sure, it dies and your opponent can get their thing back or whatever, but I'm good with it. I think this is cool. This is also one that, remember, you have the other thing, you can start copying creatures, so you can get this into play, and then you can start to stealing all your opponent's stuff by just copying them. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, and the fact that you can kill it and get your creature back makes it pretty fair, so I don't have a problem with this card. I think it's good, just not insane. This one only got previewed this morning in the special event. I don't even know what we call that. We need a name for that. But Asmodeus the Archfiend. 4 black. If you would draw a card, exile the top card or the top card of your library face down instead. So if you would draw, you just put it face down to the side. You can pay 3 black to draw 7. You can pay 1 black and return all cards exiled with Asmodeus the Archfiend to their owner's hand, and you lose life, or you lose that much life. Okay, so this card replaces your draw by exiling it, so you don't get new cards unless you're willing to pay the black and put those cards into your hand and lose the life. You can pay 3 to draw 7. And then one of the things we thought about when this was previewed, or when we found it initially, we were discussing it, said, if you can find a way to sacrifice it, you can effectively pay 3 with the draw 7 on the stack, sacrifice it, and then you just get to draw 7 because they don't have to get tucked anywhere. So that's kind of cool. So if you're doing that type of thing and something with sack outlets or whatever, it's solid. Otherwise, you just have a big 6/6. But the other downside is if you're low enough in life and you don't have a sack outlet, you can kind of get stuck just not ever getting new cards. Because if you would draw, you have to put it face down exiled. So then the only way to get those cards in your hand is at some point to lose a life, which is a little bit tough and scary. But it is a 6/6, so maybe it's fine. You know? So it's, again, do not compare this to Gristlebrand. Like, I'm probably going to say that so much. Like, don't compare current cards to old cards. Like, it's fine as a point of reference to say, like, it kind of does this thing. But people constantly saying, like, this is the new something is really bad. This is not Gristlebrand. Gristlebrand was just straight up, play it, pay my life, get my cards right now, and I can try to do whatever I want to do with those cards. I can combo with them. I can set up next turn. I can discard them for abilities. Like, this is not Gristlebrand. This is 6 mana, and I have to spend more mana to get the cards, and I have to spend more mana to put those cards into my hand. So this is totally different. Yeah, this is a whole different ball game here than a Gristlebrand. But I mean, is there a world where maybe you could play this as a backup Gristlebrand in a deck or something? Maybe. I don't know. But it's at least an interesting card and unique, and there's something to be said for that. And it's also just a rare, not a mythic. So that was kind of surprising. Zorn. If you would create... Oh, well, Zorn is a 2 colorless and a red. 3/2. Elemental. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. So treasure tokens plus 1. And that's it. Yeah, if you're playing a treasure deck, you play Zorn. Not much else to say, really. I think my question is, though, just how much treasure do you need? Right? Like, at what point is having, like, 10 treasure going to be excessive? Because you do have a lot of things that make treasure. You have this. You've also got Goldspan Dragons. You've got Magdas. You've got, like, a whole list of stuff. Like, at what point is it just, like, I have treasure for the sake of having treasure? You know, but if you can use all that mana, it's going to be kind of awesome. So, yeah. Zorn, fine card. Only downside, it's a 2 toughness. So that's a little bit of a liability. But otherwise, fine. Instrument of the Bards. 1 green. Legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a harmony counter on Instrument of the Bards. 3 colorless and a green. Tap it. Search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to the number of harmony counters on Instrument of the Bards. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If that card's legendary, you create a treasure token. Then shuffle. Man, I don't know how I feel about this card. It's kind of like a free... Not a free search. I mean, you have to pay for it. But you're getting to search for the card you want every turn. You also get to choose if you put the harmony counter on it, right? So if you have like a sweet spot, say like you top out at 4 mana or 5 mana, like you can make sure that's the most and you can keep going to get the thing. However, you are spending the mana to put it into your hand, which is a little disappointing. But cool thing is you don't have to do it as a sorcery. So you can totally just, you know, maybe you don't have anything to do during your opponent's end step, and then you have a chance to play it on your turn. I don't know. This is a well-balanced card, which, I don't know, maybe makes it where I don't want to play with it. But it's a pretty cool card overall. It's very evocative of what it's trying to do, but not one I think people really need necessarily. I mean, especially when you already have, what was the other one? The 2 green enchantments. Crap. The one that, like, you can put a card in for free whenever that's equal to 1 more than another permanent you have. That thing. Like, that barely even gets play, and that feels like it's better than this. So I'm going to assume Instrument of the Bards just doesn't get much play. I think it's fine. Because I don't even think I necessarily need this early. I mean, you know, if the game's going to go on for a while. Like, honestly, this could be a reasonable sideboard card if you're playing against control-type decks, right? Because you know the game's going to go long. Being able to just keep getting threats into your hand and getting to select what threats you want is pretty key. So I could be talked into that in that setting, but a sideboard card at best, sadly. I don't think this is something I want main deck. Dancing Sword is a rare. So it's 1 white, 1 colorless, equipment, Equipped creature gets +2/+1. When equipped creature dies, you may have Dancing Sword become a 2/1 construct artifact creature with flying and ward 1. If you do, it's no longer an equipment. This is something. So you get to equip a creature. When that creature dies, the sword becomes a 2/1. And flying with ward 1. I don't... This is a quirky card, man. I'm kind of into it. Like, here's the interesting thing, right? Is that, are we now entering the time that we can play a Pharrell Halvar deck? You know what I mean? Because, like, we have this. You've got Icing Death. You've got Halvar. You still have Maul the Skyclaves. And Icing Death is a creature that becomes an equipment. Halvar can be an equipment or a creature. And then you have this that's an equipment that becomes a creature. So you can minimize the number of situations you get where you have all the creatures or all the equipment, right? Because now you have things that can do both. And that's actually kind of nice. Because that's sort of one of the downsides when you build that sort of deck, right? Is you kind of have to keep playing this game of how much equipment do I play? Or even, let's say, red-white equipment-based decks, right? Warrior equipment or whatever. Now you have enough that you could almost justify doing it. And the equipment aren't bad. Like, this is a 2 mana, gives you +2/+1 and equips for 1, which is reasonable, right? You have Halvar, that equipment's reasonable because it returns a creature to your hand. We all know that Maul the Skyclaves is good. So it's like, all right. And then Icing Death is just a dude, but then becomes an equipment. So, like, maybe that's a thing. I could be talked into. I think, like, now we're starting to cross that point that these are enough quality equipment things. And you don't necessarily feel bad about even equipping a creature because now you have creatures that become equipment and equipment that become creatures when those creatures die. So I think that makes it more justifiable. So I'm on board. I think that one's easy to talk me into. Wizard Spellbook. Oh my god, this cost 1,000,000 mana. 5 blue. Artifact. Tap. Exile target insert sorcery card from a graveyard. Roll a d20. Activate only as a sorcery. So already has a lot of restrictions. It costs 7. I have to tap it. I have to roll a 20, so I don't even know 100% what I'm getting. And I can only do it as a sorcery. So we're already off to a bad start before I even read what the options are. 1 to 9. Copy that card. You may cast the copy. Okay. 10 to 19. Copy that card. You may cast the copy by playing 1 rather than paying its mana cost. Fair. Wait. So the first one, you copy the card. Oh. So you don't get to play it. You have to still pay the cost for it. So you just get the option to play a copy of it. Got it. And then on the second one, it says you can copy the card, but then you can cast it by paying 1 instead of whatever its cost is. And then 20, you copy each card exiled with Wizard Spellbook. You may cast any number of the copies without paying. Or so you get to do them for free, basically. Man, I don't know. This feels bad. This feels really, really bad. Like, I don't even know, like, ugh, this feels bad. So it's 7 mana. You can only do it as a sorcery. It's a random roll, so you don't know what you're going to get. So you kind of have to leave mana open because you don't know if you're going to need it or not. It only really activates if you already have an instant or a sorcery in the graveyard. Yeah, not good. I'm moving on from this card. I'm just going to say too many bad things. I don't think that's what we want. All right, next card. Forsworn Paladin. Whoa, that's kind of jumped down there. Hold on a second. There you go. Forsworn Paladin. Black. 1/1. Creature. Human Knight. Which is not bad. We have a few builds for humans and knights that this could go into. Has Menace. Pretty solid. 1 colorless and a black. Tap it. Pay 1 life. Create a treasure token. Okay. 2 black. Or 2 colorless and a black. Target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. If mana from treasure was spent, to activate this ability, the creature gains Death Touch also. This is a pretty good card, man. This is solid. This goes into human decks. It goes into knight decks still for standard for a little longer. It's a solid 1/1 on its own with Menace and the ability to pump and be scary. Not only that, if you this is the cool part about it, right? Because it has Menace, if you activate its Death Touch ability, you give it +2, so you're going to get to hit both of the blockers and kill them both. So that's kind of neat, unless they have First Strike, obviously. But yeah, this is a solid card. I like this card. I'm in. This gets a thumbs up from me. Oh, you're talking about Wizard Spellbook being Commander? I don't even think people see it in Commander hardly, unless they're basing a deck around like dice rolls or some weird theme. I don't think you're hardly going to see that card. Delina, Wild Mage, 3 colorless and a red, legendary creature, Elf Shaman, one of the rare red elves. Whenever Delina, Wild Mage, attacks, choose target creature you control, roll a d20. 1 to 14, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it has exile at the end of combat. 15 to 20, create one of those tokens, roll again. Okay. So in theory, you could attack and chain off 1,000,000 rolls. Minimum, you're going to get 1 copy of whatever creature you want. The downside, this only triggers when Dina attacks too, though. So you're paying a 4 mana 3/2, and then Dina has to get in there to scrap during the combat to get multiple. Now, I will say this, like, after your opponent swept the board and then you play a Dina and they don't immediately have another removal, then the game gets exciting because it's like, well, are we going to get 4 rolls? Or are we going to get 1? Like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of fun and exciting. I dig that part of it, that the anticipation of what the rolls are going to be could be pretty sweet. But, yeah, the card's not that good. And I'm a fan. You know, I would like this type of stuff. I like copying things for free. If, you know, especially in red, you don't get to do that often. But, yeah. I think both red and anything else you're going to pair red with, whether that be black or green most of the time. Oh, even white right now. You know, though, well, no, I was going to say, maybe even something like the Boros Winota decks, but the problem is those already have too much at 4, because you're playing the Blade Historian and you're playing Winotas, so you're probably no room for this even. So, yeah. That's sad. It's sad. It's a fun card. It's really neat, but, yeah, couldn't really see it anywhere. Froghemoth. I feel like this should be a D&D monster I know, and I've never played one. I've never been against one. And so it's like, but anyway, a Froghemoth. I have history to go look up now. 3 green, creature, frog, horror, trample, haste, 4/4. So not bad. Whenever Froghemoth deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a +1/+1 on it for each creature card exiled this way. You gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way. Whew, so this is like a good late game ooze. Haste, trample, 4/4 for 5 mana. You know, I'll say this. We had the Gruul Haste deck we built. I might be willing to play 2 of these instead of 2 Vorinclex that are in the list currently. Because Vorinclex was kind of in there just like, you're 6/6, you're hasty, whatever, we could do it. But to have another thing at 5, and it's a threat the opponent has to deal with, like it can exile their whole yard effectively over a couple of turns. So that's not bad. Interesting that you gain life for non-creatures and you get +1/+1s for creatures. Oh, but actually it doesn't have the versatility of the ooze, because it has to be from their graveyard. So whoever you deal damage to, you can't remove creatures from your own. So that is a little bit of a different downside, but I think I still kind of like it. I mean, it's unfortunate the creature types are frog and horror, so it really doesn't go with anything. It doesn't fit any theme decks or whatever, but I'm alright with that. I think the card is solid. Not great, but solid. Enough that I'm still going to be afraid of it if my opponent casts it. Guardian. Whoa. Here we go. There we go. Guardian of Faith. Colorless, white. Creature, spirit, night, flash, vigilance. Lots of words there. When Guardian of the Faith enters the battlefield, hey, welcome everybody, they're new followers. Any number of other target creatures you control phase out. So interesting. We have cards now that kind of protect our creatures. We have the, what was that, the 4-mana Angel that comes into play. You choose any number of creatures that go away until that Angel goes away or whatever. You can return them. You have this now, which is Flash, and can basically save your team and have them come back during the next upkeep. Um, I'm going to say this is a fine card, but probably more as, well, my first instinct is to say it's a sideboard card. Yeah, I think so, because I don't think you necessarily want a 3/2 for 3 mana in your decks. Even as an aggro deck, I don't think that's what you're looking for in the main. It doesn't really give you a true combo or combat trick because, you know, you have to be phased out for a turn. So, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. That's all I can really say. Yeah, I mean, it saves stuff and that's cool, but it's again, I'm thinking about other things decks are already doing at 3 mana, and I don't think this wants to be in that same spot that a lot of those decks have. So it's mostly trying to figure out, like, what decks would want this, right? Are we playing it to defend ourselves against, like, extinction events and the like? Then, like, maybe I could see that being a thing. Like, if you're worried about your opponents playing Shadow's Verdict on the following turn, like, then okay. Then you basically force your opponent to have 2 or 3 sweepers of some kind, and that's alright. But I think, now, best of 1 on Arena, maybe you squeeze 1 or 2 of these into your list just because. But generally speaking, I think if you're playing something that's, well, if you're playing best of 3, I think you just sideboard it. But maybe you could play this main deck for a couple copies on best of 1. But I think that's all I'd really do with it. Alrighty. Yon T. Malison. 1 blue, 1 colorless for a snake rogue. Ooh, more rogues. Yon T. Malison can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone. Okay. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, enter the dungeon. So that's kind of interesting. By the way, I'm taking more bites of my food over here. I've not been eating while we've been doing this. But it's a 2/1 that basically is unblockable when it attacks by itself. So I don't hate that. Also, the dungeons have some good abilities, right? Drawing cards, scrying, doing all that stuff. So it's possible that you just do this to attack and then you just get a cool ability. And maybe that's okay. But I don't know. This is a cool card because there's enough things that say venture that you could build around, which I'm kind of feeling, which could be kind of cool. But you do get bonuses for attacking. But it is just a 2/1. I think you only want this if you're building specifically for that strategy. But it's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't rush out and get your hands on them or whatever, but if you do think you're going to be doing a lot of dungeon diving, it's a fine card. Alright. We're going to need translation on this one. It's Westgate Regent. 3 colorless, black. It's a vampire, flying, ward, discard a card. So that's a cool thing. Whenever Westgate Regent deals combat damage to a player, put that number of +1/+1 counters on. Ooh. That's nice. So to kill it or target it, your opponent's going to have to discard a card. If it connects, you get to put that many counters. So this thing kills your opponent in like 2 attacks, right? Because the first time you hit for 4, next time you hit for 8, they're probably already dead or close to dead at that point because you're not even playing this till turn 5. And we know one of the sets coming out with Innistrad is Vampire Heavy. This card's cool. This honestly, I would say go ahead and get these if you want to try to play with it. I think it's cool. I would say in paper, there's a chance these are going to be very cheap for a couple of months before people make the connection that we have a vampire set coming. Crimson Vow, I think is the name of the set. I would scoop some of these up when they're cheap. I'm personally probably going to get 8 of these. I like when people speculate and you hear people saying like, "Oh, I'm going to get 25 copies or 50 copies or 100 copies." I'm like, I don't go crazy. I don't unless I really believe in it, I wouldn't go crazy. Because the other part is, where are you going to unload 100 copies all at once anyway? You're probably not. But I think realistically, this is a card you would play with. It's really strong. I think if there's anything that gives vampires bonuses or makes vampires cheaper or whatever, because it's in the title, right? We know it's going to be vampires, so it can't be that bad. I would say go for it. I would get a couple of these and sit on them for a couple months at worst. My worst case scenario, I bet you'll be able to pick these up for under $1. So go ahead and grab, like, I don't know, maybe not under $1. I think it's too good of an ability that it won't be an. You probably get them for about $1.50, probably. If they hit that price, I don't think it hurts you to pick up at least a playset of them, because I don't think they'll be worth less than that while they're in standard if there are quality vampires. If not, you'll be out $5 or $6 for scooping them up, but that's what I'd say on that. I don't know if it's going to be immediately impactful, but that does change if this card does land into a deck. Say, I don't know, something that wants a top-end finisher like Rakdos Sacrifice may decide to play it, and then it becomes kind of a thing. Because it is kind of quirky, even in Rakdos Sacrifice, right? Because you can target it yourself with something just so you discard a card and then be able to use your Croxer or something. So it could realistically end up as something. No, it puts that number of +1/+1 counters on it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. You would deal damage, and then it would get +1/+1 till in the turn. Yeah, it's absolutely counters. So it's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. So yeah, that's a good card. If you can get those on the cheap right now, I would probably get them because I have a feeling they're going to be worth a lot more later. Zalto, Fire Giant Duke. Okay, so here's a giant. We were looking for more giants out of this set, so let's see if there's more. Legendary creature for 3 red, Giant Barbarian, Trample. Also nice, good start. 7/3, solid. Whenever the Zalto, Fire Giant Duke, is dealt damage, venture into the dungeon. Well, that's okay. So effectively, it's likely going to get hit once or blocked once. And you'll go into, unless you just block somebody's 1/1 with it. But if you have a 7/3, you're either attacking or you're blocking their biggest thing, because why would you just want to block the 1/1? Venturing the dungeon isn't great on its own. Man, this is the most disappointing card so far. Not because it's awful, but because I'm reading through the card and I'm like, okay, it's a 5 mana, 7/3, it's got trample, it's a giant, all right, cool. And then I read the ability and I'm like, oh, that's meh. I mean, you can have some stuff that target it's of your own, and you could deal damage to it, ping it a couple of times, and there's probably something there. But that's a lot of work for a 5 mana thing just to get some dungeon stuff when there's already so many other things that venture. So unless you find a way to just fit this into a giant deck already, but I'm not even sure a giant deck wants a 7/3 for 5 mana, because the giant decks already have quality 4 and 5 mana stuff. I'm passing on this one. I don't think it's great. I think it's cool in theory, but yeah, you're basically playing a 5 mana 7/3 trample. If that's what you're looking for, trample cards, whatever, fine. But the ability itself feels so minimal unless you find some way to ping that every turn. All right, we have an affordable elf, it looks like. So we have Varus, Silvery Moon Ranger. Legendary creature, human elf ranger. So it's a human and an elf. All right, so fits a couple deck types. It has reach, awesome. Ward 1, also good for a 3/3. So this is solid. Like 3/3 for 3 with reach and ward 1. Even if it just has a mediocre ability from here, it's going to be a solid card. Whenever you cast a creature or a planeswalker, venture into the dungeon. Okay, well, we were looking for more green things at venture, so this works with Eliwick as well if you want to play it in that deck, though they would both be legendary. This ability triggers only once each turn. Downside, but makes sense. Whenever you complete a dungeon, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So that's kind of cool. So if you do the easiest dungeon, I think it has like 5 steps in it. I think maybe 4 in the simplest of dungeons. So if you do that, you can get a 2/2 when it's done. You're getting to venture each turn pretty much, practically guaranteed. Also amusing that... Oh, no, it's when you cast, not when one comes into play. Because I was going to say the wolf starts another dungeon, but it doesn't. Yeah, this card's solid. I don't have anything. Honestly, this card seems reasonable, even if, like, venturing isn't my main thing. If I don't even care about completing dungeons, it's just like, I'll just naturally get that ability and get some bonuses throughout the turn. So it's a 3 mana, 3/3 with reach and ward, so it's a little bit harder to kill. It can block some flyers, or rogues for that matter, as a 3/3. And I just get a bonus ability of basically every time I play a creature or planeswalker, I get another ability, because every room of the dungeons do something. So yeah, this card's solid. I'm about it. It's very deceptive, because I think people will read it and say like, but if you're not doing the dungeon deck thing, I won't play it. But the reality is, it basically just says every one of your creatures has an additional ability, whether that's draw a card, scry, search for a land, whatever, right? Like, this is cool. I don't see the problem with this. Like, this card's excellent. I mean, it is double green, so I guess that's the downside, but yeah, I'm playing it. That card's great. All right, next one up. Nadar, Selfless Paladin. 2 colorless and a white. I almost said green. So 3 mana, legendary creature, dragon. There are a lot of legends in this set, so commander players rejoice. Vigilance, 3/3. So okay, 3 mana, 3/3 vigilance. Whenever Nadar, Selfless Paladin, enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. So it's just 3/3 for 3. When it enters a play or attacks, you get to venture. It's fine. I don't know. I'm not playing this normally, but if I'm playing a venture deck, I would play this. Now, okay, so if anybody's... By the way, I like this throwback art that looks like from the original player's handbooks and stuff. Like, big fan of this stuff. Now, I want to say this. Like, some people are going to say, well, why do you think the elf one's better than this one? And they both venture. The difference is, with the elf, I'm getting that every single time I do something, which is wanting to play a creature or planeswalker, regardless of anything else. Right? If that elf never attacks, plus it comes with an additional ability of reach and ward. So that makes a big difference. But even just on the abilities, you're looking at 3/3 for 3 of both cards. The green one at least is giving me something every turn. It's basically making every card I play in the future better, even if I don't care about dungeons. Nadar, on the other hand, only triggers once, because I could have a game state where I just don't get to attack, so I get to venture once and that's it, and we're at a stalemate and I don't want to run this into combat because it's just going to die or whatever. Whereas with the elf, I'm still playing creatures every turn to try to break that stalemate, but I'm also still getting stuff every turn. So I do think there is a large chasm of difference between the two cards. And also, the other one being both a human and an elf means it fits more creature types as well. This is a dragon knight. Not likely for the white to be part of a dragon deck in standard. The knight, we don't really even have that many knights to do anything with right now that we want to play this in place of. I mean, we do have knight decks, and those are still playable. I mean, we put a couple up on the channel this past season, but I don't think this is the slot you want in the knights decks currently. So, I don't know. I think it's still a fine card. A 3 mana, 3/3 with vigilance, and it has an upside. So, I mean, you're not going to be upset playing this, even if you just wanted to play 1 or 2 and try it out. I'm a bigger fan of the green card, though, significantly. Cool. Next one. By the way, I feel so rude that I have, like, food and snack over here while I'm going. But I'm trying to keep this going because we're already encroaching on an hour and a half, and we still have a ways to go. So, Hope y'all are along for the ride still. Hopefully I'm not boring y'all and this information is good. Because I have no idea. A dragon turtle. It's straight up just called dragon turtle. I love that. I think this amuses me because like D&D has so many generic monsters that I love that we just have generic monsters in D&D. I'm so pleased by that. Or in Magic now. Dragon turtle. Colorless blue. So 3 mana. 3/5. That's not bad for 3 mana. Has flash. Also cool. When Dragon Turtle enters the battlefield, tap it, and up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. They don't untap during their controller's untap step. Oh, that's weird. So you can put the turtle in. Oh, you don't have a choice. It's not even a may. It's just you have to tap it. Okay, so you play the turtle, you tap it, you tap one of the things from your opponent, and then they're basically locked down for a turn. Though you can flash the turtle, so you don't really get the penalty because you're playing it during their end step, let's say. You lock a thing down and then you untap with a 3/5, and your opponent has their best thing tapped for another turn. Wow, this is weird. I think if you're playing a flash type deck, this is pretty cool. I wonder how much this card's going to get played by itself. Yeah, this is weird. This is a weird card. Like, you still have to tap your creature down, and you get to eventually untap before the opponent does. But you do end up with a 3/5. This is a weird card. Yeah, you're still going to be tapped for a turn, but like you still get to untap before your opponent does on their key creature. Because you will go through your untap first tapped, then they go through theirs untapped. Then you get to untap yours and get to use it for something. So yeah, I don't this is weird. This card might actually be playable. Like, in 3/5's a big body on turn 3. Like, think about it, the only thing we have right now that's 5 power for 3 that anybody plays is like Lovestruck Beast. And that's only standard legal for 3 more months. Hey Galen, how's it going? Thanks for the 6-month sub, friend. Yeah, so this is a weird card. I kind of like it though. Man, this is the type of card that like I kind of want to be like, yeah, but maybe nobody's gonna play it. But the time somebody does, and you're playing an aggro deck, you're gonna feel so bad that you can't get through an attack step because there's a big 5 toughness thing in your way, right? Or honestly, even if your opponent like goes and equips something or whatever, like before the attack step, you go ahead and play the turtle, tap down their thing. Like, this card might actually get some play, y'all. Seriously. Like, it looks weird, and it looks kind of bad, but Dragon Turtle might be legit. So, yeah, don't sleep on this card. Like, if you're curious, I would say put a couple of these in a deck if you're playing anything that's even remotely mid-rangey, aggro, whatever, and it's playing enough blue to support this card. Put a couple copies in and try it out. I think you might be surprised. I really do. Okay. This card is white, but it's black. But it's white. Okay, somebody had to make the joke. I at least got it out of the way. 1 colorless and a black. 3/2. Creature Zombie Soldier. Which, again, we're probably going to get a bunch of zombies at some point during Innistrad. White enters the battlefield, tap. Makes sense, as is a 3/2. Life drain. Whenever a creature dealt damage by white this turn dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token and exile that card. Oh. So, if the white fights something effectively and kills it, then you get a 2/2 zombie and you exile that card. I don't know how... I kind of started out wanting to be excited about this card. Now I'm a little... I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a world where if we played this in a snow-based deck and maybe we do some black-green snow, maybe black-green-blue with the zombie snow deck that I made kind of beginning of this last season. Like, maybe that's a thing. It'll probably have some home. I mean, a 3/2 for 2's solid, and it has an upside that, fight something. Even if your opponent's attacking with multiple small things and you block one and you trade for your white, you still end up getting a 2/2 when it's all done, and you exile the creature from the opponent. So that's not bad. It does suck that it comes into play tapped, but I kind of get it. Yeah, it's actually not that hard to trigger the other attacks. Like, because here's the worst case scenario, right? Eventually your opponent just attacks with the one thing that the white can't kill, but they're not attacking with all the other stuff. And that's not bad either. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with this card. I think it's one that can probably really do something. And again, because it's a zombie, right now, basically anything that's zombie, werewolf, vampire, whatever, I'm willing to go ahead and invest a little, play set, maybe 2 play sets worth, if I can get them cheap enough, knowing what's coming in Innistrad. So, yeah, this is probably going to be one I'm going to get a play set and tuck it away for later just in case. If it ends up not being anything, I'm okay with that, but I think it will actually be something. Meteor Swarm, because we do have Meteor Storm as a different card. Meteor Swarm, X, red, sorcery, Meteor Swarm, deals 8 damage divided as you choose among X target creatures and or planeswalkers. Well, that's a card. So you can just pay 4 and deal 8 to something? Am I reading that right? So it just straight up deals 8 among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. Or, well, any X. But this card's good. This card's really good. Like, on turn, you can just pay 5 mana and take out 2 of your opponent's biggest things, potentially. Or 3 of their small things. Like, imagine playing this against mono red. On the turn, they play, I don't know. They get to turn 4. If you're on the play, you're like, great, I'm going to kill, you're an axe and something. Or kill, all your small creatures and just leave you with, one thing. This has to be playable. Yeah, I can't imagine this card's not playable. If you pay 0 to swarm neither creature does it work, the card technically still resolves. You just don't have any targets. Because you have to choose X targets. So if you don't have a target, the damage just doesn't go anything. So you could pay 3 just to play the spell and have it go to your graveyard if you need to. You can have X as 0, but it won't do anything. I mean, it technically did something. It just did what you asked it to do, which is choose 0 things. So minimum 1 to deal 8. But what else have we ever had? You can pay 4 and deal 8. That's really good. 4, you deal 8. At 5, you deal 4 to 2 things, or 5 and 3, or 6 and 2, or whatever. This is a good card. Considering the focus is based on name, I wonder how many zombies we'll see in the next Innistrad set. Probably a lot. But even Blasphemous Act doesn't get you there a lot of the times. Your opponent here's the thing, your opponent can have 3 things, and you can be a turn away from dead. Blasphemous Act's not going to save you. This thing, you can be like, yeah, cool, I'll pay 5 and kill 2 things. Yeah, this is really, really good. I mean, this is 4 mana, remove any dragon, kill any planeswalker. This is good. Yeah, this card's solid. It is a sorcery, but fine, whatever. Yeah, I'm into it. Next one. We have, this is another one I have to what? It says Ochre Jelly, which is gelatinous something, generally, is probably how it's going to end up being translated. It's X and a green. It's an ooze. It has trample. Ochre Jelly enters the battlefield with X +1/+1s. Not a surprise, as it's an ooze. And then when it dies, if it had 2 or more +1/+1 counters, create a token that's a copy of it at the beginning of the end step. That token enters the battlefield with half of the 1/1 counters rounded down. Oh, that's cool. So however big you make it, it just keeps coming back smaller. So if you make it a, let's call it a 4/4, it comes back as a 2, and then that 2 dies, comes back as a 1, and then that's it. So it's kind of cool. I'm into this. It's kind of neat. I don't hate it. It's not like great, but it scales up obviously. So if you get to the late game and you have like 8 mana or whatever, you make a 7/7 and it comes back as a 4, well, it comes back as a 3/3 and then it comes back as a 1/1. So like that's still fine. Well, he comes at a 6/6 and then a 3/3 and then a 1/1. So yeah, I'm okay with that. I think this is cool. Yeah. Would Conclave Mentor add counters to the splits? Yes, because it enters with a +1/+1 counter, so you get to add one more. So technically, if you can keep a Conclave Mentor alive next to it, you will always have a 2/2. Because it'll die, it'll come back as a 1/1, the Mentor puts an additional counter on it. So yeah. Love the set because you're big into D&D, your husband and I met at a game. Well, that's fantastic, Blue. So yeah, if you're a D&D fan, this set covers a lot of bases. But yeah, the ooze is kind of sweet. I'm kind of into that card. I think it's cool. I like the design of it. Here's another one that we need a translation for, but this is Oswald Fiddlebender. 1 colorless and a white for a 2/2. He's a gnome artificer. And it's 1 white, tap it, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card whose mana value is equal to the mana value of the sacrificed artifact +1. Then put it onto the battlefield. Shuffle your library. Use it only as a sorcery. This card's good. I just don't know how much it sees play in 60 card Magic. If there's a home for it, pretty fantastic. I'm just not sure where it goes. It's a 2 mana 2/2, which is nice. I can't think of anything unless you want to play like an equipment-based deck, but even then, I'm not sure that's a thing you want to be doing. Sacrificing it, because you don't want to play a bunch of expensive equipment, so you don't really get that much ability. So it's probably more of a commander thing where you can just like get rid of one of your mana rocks into a real something else useful. Once that's expended its usefulness, you go get your big hitter artifacts. So like maybe, but it's a fine card. It's a fine card. Maybe it's possible something like this can be played in Modern or maybe even Legacy. However, the ability being used as a sorcery is a little bit of a downside since the card only goes... Oh no, it does put the card on the battlefield. So yeah, it kind of has to be a sorcery, I suppose, for balance purposes. But it's a good card. It's a good card. I just don't know if standard historic 60 card Magic really wants it. Okay, what else we got here? The Black Staff of Waterdeep. 1 blue, legendary artifact. You may choose not to untap the Black Staff of Waterdeep during your untap step. You can pay a blue and a colorless, tap it. Another target non-token artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature as long as the Black Staff of Waterdeep remains tapped. Activate only as a sorcery. This is a pretty sweet card. Basically turns every artifact you have can become a 4/4. And then if it dies, you just go, okay, cool, I'm going to turn something else into a 4/4. So yeah, this is neat. I don't think it's crazy good, but I do think if you find a deck that's playing a lot of artifacts, this could be kind of cool. We already had like the mono artifact decks that splash black or play black as its main color in addition to the artifacts. So maybe you could splash just a little bit of blue with like 8 multi-lands or something to play this. So you have something else to fight with, which could be kind of cool. I was just about to say, that's the other thing. You can turn treasure into 4/4s. Which, you know, that's something else you can do because there's a lot of treasure available in these decks or in the format now. So yeah, I'm good with it. I think this is pretty neat. This could easily find a home in standard. I mean, it wouldn't even need a lot, right? If you had a deck that makes even a modest amount of treasure, you could play 1 or 2 of these and then just have cheap 4/4s. Like you could be making 4/4s that just die and you don't even care. So that's pretty sweet. I'm into that. Why did this skip all the way down? All right, cool. This is a D&D classic monster. I'm pretty sure if you played D&D for more than a few years, you've seen a gelatinous cube and you probably hated it. But 2 colorless, black creature ooze. When gelatinous cube enters the battlefield, exile target non-ooze creature an opponent controls until gelatinous cube leaves the battlefield. You can pay X and a black, put target creature card with mana value X, exiled with Gelatinous Cube, into its owner's graveyard. So the amusing thing is this is a 4-3 for 4, which is fine on its own. It's a 4-3 for 4 that also temporarily exiles a creature. However, you can also just be like, you know what? And I'm going to pay its cost to just make sure you don't get it. So the ooze just eats it straight up. Like, that's kind of cool. Just straight up, just, all right, 4-3, I exile your Duder, and then I just don't want you to ever have it back. So here you go. Like, I'm good with this. You could run 1 with Tormod's Crypt and have a 4-4 on turn 4. That's true. You could do quite a few things. But yeah, this is cool. I like this card. I think this card will definitely see some play. I mean, other cards like this that have temporarily removed stuff have seen play off and on over the years. Can't see why that wouldn't. Here's what's funny. We have an actual card called Wish, which we have different types of wishes in Magic. That's the first time we have a card just called Wish. 2 colorless and a red sorcery. You may play a card you own from outside the game this turn. So it just does what the other ones does what the other ones do, but no specific type of card. You just go get one. Like all the others, it's going to be, hey, low, good game with your 20 peeps. How's it going? We are just doing a set review of Adventures in Forgotten Realms. So welcome. So yeah, this is fine. You're still going to be able to get cards mostly. It's going to be errated, or not errated, but ruled like all other Magic stuff. That you just get cards from your sideboard because those are the only things you have access to that are outside the game. Is this good or bad? I think right now it's pretty mediocre because you also already have lessons and other things, and those come on cards where you get an ability and the lesson, and you can go get the card you want. Granted, the lessons are all sorceries, but there's enough variety that they check most of the boxes where they need a removal card or want to deal damage to something or whatever. So you can sort of set up what you want. Wish, sadly, I don't think is very good right now. Wish there was more, but not much. Then we move on to a card that, yes, I'm just going to say this card I'm overjoyed about. There's actually 2 different cards I think I've seen in this set that are green, that are 2 mana, and that's been green's weak spot for the last, or at least aggressive green decks. For the last couple of years, you've had Scavenging Ooze and some junk filling that spot. Now you actually have real cards you can put there, and this card is legit, y'all. I know people want to say like a bunch of other things, but this card is really good. I mean, it's a 2 mana 3, and admittedly it is double green, so you have to be heavy in green. But it's 2 mana 3/3. It's also a werewolf, which again, you know how I've been bringing it up. If it's vampires, zombies, or werewolves, we know we're going into Innistrad where that might be a thing, so just keep that in mind. Whenever a werewolf leader attacks, if you attacked with creatures with total power 6 or greater, you draw a card. Very easy to get to 6 power and attack. You pay 3 and a green. Until end of turn, werewolf pack leader has base power and toughness 5/3, gains trample, and isn't a human. Which is also cute because they made sure it didn't become a 6 by itself and you got a card. So I think that's very fun from a balance perspective. But, I mean, late game, you've got a 5/3 trampler. Early on, you've got a 3/3 for 3. I mean, you know, you can even play a haste thing and attack the next turn and get a card for your efforts. Like, this card's good. This card's just really good. Like, I actually don't think Demi Lich will end up being the best card in the set. I think it's a good card, but I don't think it'll be close. I don't even know if this will be the best card in the set. I like it a lot, though. It may be one of the most played cards. I don't know if it ended up being the best card. Because, I mean, this is still, like, double green. Has to go in a very specific type of deck. But it's a damn good card, though. It's a damn good card. If somebody wanted to claim it's the best card in the set, I wouldn't argue over it. But, yeah. Not a lot else to say. This card's just good. Alright, next up. We're getting through these slowly but surely. Flumph. Which is actual a D&D monster that does look like a jellyfish. So you have Flumph is a colorless and a white. 0/4. Defender flying. Whenever Flumph is dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. Well, if you play group HUD decks and Commander, you're gonna love this card, and everybody's gonna be getting cards, and it's gonna be great. For Standard, I don't know. Like for regular 60 card Magic, how many scenarios do I have where I want to have an 0-4 and give my opponent cards? It feels weird that this is on a rare that both people are getting cards. I don't know how I feel about that. Because if I'm playing a, let's say, controlling type deck, one of my advantage is kind of wearing my opponent's resources down and then sweeping the board or whatever, right? Like, I would be totally fine if I'm playing the aggro deck, my opponent plays a Flumph, and which is kind of a cool name to just keep saying. But if my opponent plays a Flumph and I'm getting to keep attacking and they're blocking like a 2-power, 3-power creature and I'm getting a card every turn, that actually feels good for me. Like, yeah, they're also getting cards, so maybe it's fine. But, like, I don't know. It's such a weird card, man. It's such a weird card. Yeah, I don't know who's benefiting more in that scenario. Like, am I getting more being the control deck, or is my opponent getting the advantage? Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I'm probably not going to play Flump than anything until it's proven otherwise. Or maybe there's some card that comes out that like restricts your opponent drawing cards, or they get damage for drawing cards. Or, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're playing. Well, no, because I was going to say with Underworld Dreams, but Underworld Dreams you need triple black or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm out on Flump. I think I have to talk myself into playing like a weird setup to even make that work. So I'm out. Yeah, even Narset's not enough. Like even Narset's not going to cut it for me. Narset's fine, keeps him from getting the bonus cards, but maybe in Historic is the only spot you want it. Like, or anything where you're playing Narset, but I don't know. Grazilax, Illithid, Scholar. Colorless, blue, legendary creature horror. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. 3 for a 3/2. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you can return it to your hand. So it's not mandatory. So that part's good. Because you can just let the combat happen, whatever. Whenever one or more creatures you control. So you're only going to get the card once for the turn. It's just when one or more deal damage to a player, you draw a card. So you might get a card every turn if something sneaks through. Weirdly, this feels like it's built for older formats. Like, you have the, like, mono blue flyers with, like, Curiosity and whatever, like, that sort of deck. Probably wants this type of card. Because then your flyers, even without enchantments on them, are still going to generate cards for you, so you can find more counter spells. That sort of makes sense more than it would in a 60-card format. However, there are some 60-card formats or card decks that have been kind of lackluster, but you do play a fair amount of flyers. If your flyers are getting through and getting cards every turn, that probably helps a lot. So I think this is like one of those cards that's sort of like bad, but still like low-key playable. Right? Not even bad. I think it's mediocre, but low-key playable. I think people are going to overlook this a lot in deck building, but there's going to be, like, if you have a fair amount of flyers or whatever, or even a fair amount of stuff that has ETB triggers, right? Because if you have stuff that attacks and maybe comes into play and deals some damage, or, like the gelatinous cube that can, like, just return and go get something else better from your opponent, like, I don't know. Same as Toski, but the first effect could be usable. Not really the same as Toski. Toski triggers for every creature that deals damage. This is when one or more creatures you control deal combat damage. So this is basically like you will get at most one card a turn. Toski just says every damn thing that hits your opponent, you're getting a card. So very, very different in their applications. So playable. It is legendary, so maybe you try 1 or 2 in a deck and see how it works out, but I wouldn't go crazy heavy on this one. Neat card, though. This is a 3/2 for 3, so it's not unplayable, just not stellar. Sphere of Annihilation. X and a black. Artifact, Sphere of Annihilation enters the battlefield with X void counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile Sphere of Annihilation all creatures and planeswalkers with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it. And all creatures and planeswalker cards in graveyards with the mana value less than or equal to the void counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep. So it has to, like, see, this one's tough because you can wipe the board if necessary. You can play this for 4 or 5 or whatever. But it has to survive a turn. Which, one, surviving the turn and have your opponent not destroy it, that's one problem right now, right? Because there's several things that can destroy that. There's several things that are learned that can go get lessons that destroy it. But also, you're still taking damage from those threats, whether that be creatures or planeswalkers or whatever, for another full turn, even after playing this. So, I don't know. Especially with Black already having Extinction Event, having Shadow's Verdict, you know, you've got solid spot removal. Like, maybe until September when rotation happens, I can't see this really getting a lot of play. Because you can either easily remove stuff smaller than spending 5-6 mana, right? Or you have good spot removal for the bigger planeswalkers. So I don't think this is really necessary, sadly. It's cool, but not really what we need, I don't think. I like it conceptually. I just don't think it has that much of a home, unfortunately. So I would pass on this one for now. This one is Orb of Dragonkind. 1 colorless and a red artifact. Pay 1, tap it, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells or activated abilities of dragons. You can pay a red and tap it, sacrifice the orb. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a dragon card from among them, put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Not a lot to really say about this one. It's just if you're playing a dragon deck, you're definitely going to want to play 4 of them. I mean, because basically it ramps up your mana. You spend 1 to make 2. You know, play a dragon or activate a dragon. And then if you're empty-handed, you just go look at the top of your library and get a dragon. And also, these look like they're not restricted. You can use them at any time. Doesn't have to be as a sorcery. So, yeah, solid card if you're wanting to play dragons. Let's see. We have Circle of Dreams Druid. Kind of cool looking art, too. 3 color, or you have green, green, green. Creature, elf, druid, so it's an elf. Tap, add green for each creature you control. 2/1. So a creature version of Gaia's Cradle is basically what this is. Get 1 for all your... I mean, I guess elf decks want another elvish archdruid. It just doesn't have the +1 ability, but you make more things, and it counts every creature, not just your elves, so that's kind of cool. It is 3 green, so you have to be heavy in the green mana. But, yeah, this card's fine. I think the problem is, this is another time where people go, oh, it's just like Gaia's Cradle. It's like, nah, not really. Gaia's Cradle's free. You do have to play this. Like, it's harder to remove a Gaia's Cradle than it is a 2/1 creature. So it does have its fair share of drawbacks, and it's a fine card. Do we need this in Standard or any 60-card Magic for that matter? I don't know. I mean, it's only a 2/1. It's going to be susceptible to everything. A lot of removal sweeps things that are smaller than 4 mana, so that's a thing. This one's just kind of middle of the road for me. I could see some spots where I'm playing it. Maybe if I'm trying to ramp up to like some big dragons or something, and that could be kind of useful. But yeah, I don't like, even for 3 mana. I'm kind of still on the spot where I might just want the Visionary, right? Draw a card and be able to tap for a mana. So if it's by itself or with only 1 other creature, you're not getting that big of a difference between the 2 cards. But I already got a bonus card off of the Visionary, even if this doesn't do anything, you know. So it's fine, but that's kind of it. Somebody said Lovestruck Beast and Jaspera Sentinel combo. Not really. Because you turn 1, Jaspera Sentinel, turn 2, play the 1/1 that still leaves you 2 mana. You could play something else, and then turn 3 play the Dreams Druid, but then you can't tap it. You have to wait a turn, which again you don't have to wait with the Guy's Cradle. And then you'll have a lot of mana the next turn. You could have up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana that turn, which is pretty sweet on turn 4. I guess you could have 9 mana, but that's a lot of cards too. I mean, at that point, you've already spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards minimum of 11 cards you would have, though one of them would have been an adventure card. So, like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And you would need those last cards to be amazing, or else you kind of spent a lot of effort and didn't get anything for it. So that's a little tough. So yeah, I think the card's playable and fine. I just don't think it's good necessarily. I mean, 3 green is a pretty stout cost to pay, and it kind of has to be. Okay, let's scroll down and find the rest of the rares and mythics. Let's start with these classes. So let's scroll up here. All right, and you can, let's see, gain the next level as a sorcery to add its abilities. So you can pay the cost to level up. These are kind of like the old level cards, if any of you have been playing Magic for a long time. So they made one for several of the classes. This is the Monk class, a white and a blue. And it just has the reminder text of gain the next level as a sorcery to add its abilities. So first level, oh, actually, no. It's just, yeah, it says the second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. So, straightforward, nothing too surprising there. You pay a blue and a white. This moves it to level 2. And when this class becomes level 2, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So you get to bounce something. And it says you add this ability. So you don't lose the previous abilities. You just add the new abilities. That's kind of how it's different than some of the other cards. And then colorless blue and a white to move to level 3. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. For as long as it remains exiled, it has you may cast this card from exile as long as you've cast another spell this turn. All right, so you exile the top card. As long as you play something else, you have the ability to play that card. This is kind of cool. I have to admit, this is kind of a cool card. It makes each spell cheaper that you would play. It lets you return a thing to slow your opponent down, possibly. And then late stages is just you get access to 2 cards every turn because you're going to draw 1, exile 1 at a minimum. Yeah, this is kind of neat. Well, the idea is, I think they're trying to represent the monks getting multiple attacks, right? The monks' abilities are fluidity more than anything. I think that's what they're trying to portray with the monk. I think is what they're trying to do here with this card. But it feels kind of good. And honestly, you might actually even play this, maybe in a control deck. Having access to 2 cards every turn is kind of neat. I could also see some decks where, like, maybe you're playing blue-white flyers and you're worried about emptying your hand, and now you can get multiple things a turn. Like, I don't know. I don't know. This is kind of neat. I don't really, I don't dislike it. I'll tell you that. I think it's actually more than reasonable to play. All right, Rogue class, which, of course, we're all going to hate this, I'm sure. Blue-black. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at it for as long as it remains exiled. A colorless, a blue, and a black moves it to creatures you control have menace. And then 2 colorless, a blue, and a black. You may play cards exiled with Rogue class, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. I feel like this card's better than I want to give it credit for. I think that's my issue here. I feel like it's fine, Like, you get to exile some stuff. It sort of doubles down on what the rogues are doing already. Creatures you control have menace. That's cool. Don't know how greatly it matters a lot of the times, because that's usually not how it works. But then getting to play those cards that you've been exiling is pretty sweet. So, yeah, I think that I don't personally like this, but I think it's going to end up being better than I think it is, if that makes sense. Like, I'm willing to accept that these words matter. I just can't find enough things immediately in my head where I want them to go, but I have a feeling that once somebody figures it out, each of these individual abilities is good enough on their own that they're probably going to lead to something. Because, like, even just giving everything you have menace could be a big deal, even if you're not playing that heavy, like, steal mill strategy, you know? I don't think the mana investment's that big a deal. There are many, many times where some of these decks are just sitting on extra mana for, like, and 1, 2, and 3 activations just aren't, they're just not that bad. Sorcery class. Whenever sorcery class enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Okay, that's simple enough. Level 2, creatures you control have tap, add a blue or a red, spend this mana only to cast instants or sorcery spells, or to gain a class level. That's pretty nice. And then, unfortunately, pay 5, which is probably why you need the creatures to have that ability. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, that spell deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of instant or sorcery spells you've cast this turn. Ooh, that's interesting. Not sure what deck I want this in. Like, this is one that I don't like it as much as the others, because this is basically dictating the type of deck you're going to play. You know? Like, this is saying you will be spell heavy. You will play, trying to stack multiple cheap instants and sorceries if you're going to play, which is fine. Some cards need to be built around it or whatever. But, doesn't excite me as much as the other two. At least feel like there's creative thinking around them and stuff. Like, this kind of says, like, okay, this is what you're doing, and this is the way this is going to get used. But I don't dislike it. I think it's fine. Would I rush to play it? Probably not. But it's neat, I think this whole concept's kind of cool. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of dictating what you want a little much. Like, you could probably play the Sorcerer's class one with stuff like Sprite Dragons and what is it, Storm Entity and stuff like that. And that sort of makes sense, and it fits those type of decks that you will get spell bonuses and you're getting prowess and whatever in addition to doing the other things. So maybe, but that's probably the most I could say about it. Fighter class. Red whites. When fighter class enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Colorless red and white equip abilities you activate cost 2 less to activate, and then 5 to go to a level 3. Whenever a creature you control attacks, up to 1 target creature blocks it this combat if able. Man, we were just talking earlier in the stream with all the different equipment that's available that maybe now is about the time you could do it. But this actually really lends itself to that, right? Because now you can even skimp on some of the equipment. Because you can say, okay, where I would play 3 or 4 of this one, I can play like 2 now. And play these, so then you can go search for them. And then your equipment abilities cost 2 less, which a bunch of stuff we're playing costs like 1, 2, or 3 to activate or to equip anyway. So this shrinks those down to almost nothing. And then in multiples, these are funny because you have multiple creatures block one thing. So this is, if you're putting it, again, it's very prescriptive, right? We're wanting to play it in an equipment deck, but I'm good with that. I think this is pretty cool. I think this is neat. I'm about it. I'm about it. I think this, I don't know if this is the card you needed to make the equipment thing happen, but I think it makes it that much more viable. So I would not be surprised if you see that with this. And getting to go search a card is always nice too. I mean, hard to argue that. Bard class, because everybody loves a bard. Green, red, legendary creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. That's neat. Legendary spells you cast cost green, red less to cast. This effect only reduces the amount of colored mana you pay. Also awesome. See, this is cool because you can pay the red, green, and basically level up to 2 for free, and then pay the mana you were going to pay anyway for the creature you're going to cast. So that's actually pretty nice. And then, whenever, well, it's 5 to go to level 3. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, exile the top 2 cards of your library, you may play them this turn. Now, the first thought was like, exiling the top 2 cards is like, meh, you already spent your mana to play a creature, but you did pay 2 less. So, there's a chance you're going to get something that's actually pretty cool. I kind of like this. I mean, you can play a lot of legendary stuff right now. There's a bunch that we can still play with that are standard legal. I mean, because you've got Clothis. You have, was it Arnie? The little tutu, what's her name? From Theros, I think, that attacked the satyr. Like, she's still legal. You have Vornklex is still legal. God, there's a bunch. Questing Beast. Like, there's like so many things. So many things. This has to be playable. I think this is low-key way better than people are thinking it is. Like, this has a lot of possibilities. Like, imagine, like, you could play this on 2, right? And then you could play... Now, admittedly, this is like Magic Christmas Land. I'm just, like, throwing out ideas, right? But, like, what if you pay the green-red on 2? We'll assume you paid, like, I don't know, 1 mana, something on turn 1. Whatever. It could be a goose. It could be, I don't know, Jaspera Sentinel. Turn 2, Bard class. Turn 3, you could play, let's see, 1, 2, 3 mana. You could play something that costs 4, 5. So you could just play Questing Beast? No, because it's green-red. Well, yeah, you could still play Questing Beast. Because you could reduce it by green and then just pay 3. So you could play a turn 3 Questing Beast. You could play Galea and Magda. If you had paid... God, there's so many things you could do with this. Reducing your stuff by... Well, you do have to pay to get the reduction first. So you don't get it free yet. You have to pay 2 first. So... yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's still fair, though. Still fair. You do get free Galea if you pay for it, though. Which is kind of sweet. Or you could get cheap Magda. Like, so there's things. I don't know. I kind of like that. I think I'm going to find a way to use this. I kind of like that card. I'm into it. Let's see. What other classes do we have? Okay, the other classes are uncommon. So the single color ones are uncommon. Oh, no, that's not true. 2 of them are rare. I was going to say they were all uncommons, but randomly, Paladin class is a rare. This one only costs 1. Spells your opponent casts during your turn cost 1 more to cast. So I like that. If people are going to try to counter or do other things. Man, White's gotten some good cards in the last 9 months. 2 and a white. So it takes a bit to get to level 2. Creatures you control get +1/+1, but that's totally worth it. Pay 5. Level 3 is whenever you attack until in the turn, target attacking creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature you control and gains double strike. Now, okay. The deck I just put up a couple days ago, that budget white weenie deck, would want something like this, right? It costs 1 early. You just get it down. Your opponents, if they're going to try to kill your stuff, if they're going to try to sweep the board, it's going to cost them 5 mana now or 6 mana now, which is pretty cool. Oh, no, only during your turn, though. Oh, never mind. So it's only mostly if they're going to counter or try to spot removal on your turn. That's not as good. Now, getting all your creatures to have +1/+1 is kind of nice. Man, that third level, though, is pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. I'd have to really think about it. I'm not... If this was just all your opponent's stuff costs 1 more, or spells cost 1 more, non-creatures or whatever, that would probably be good. But, this is a tough one. I'm not sure where this goes. Because I almost want to play it as a sideboard card just for the top ability. You know, but outside of that, I don't know. Interesting they made it a rare. I feel like there's something I'm willing to accept there's something I'm missing on that card. But I'm not as high on it. Ranger class, colorless and a green. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature. Okay, that's cool. This one just makes a creature when you play it. Level 1 or level 2 is cheap. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. Well, that's good. 4 to go to level 3. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. This is freaking fantastic. Like, you just get a dude, so you don't even like take a turn off. You just make a creature. And then you can be like, all right, cool. I'm just going to go ahead and pay and attack with my 3/3 wolf. Because you attack, it gets a counter. Then you do whatever for a couple of turns. And then you're like, okay, well, now I need to start trying to get extra cards. So I'm just going to pay for it and start trying to play off the top of my library. Like, yeah, now I will say the downside to these, all of them, is that once they're removed, you've kind of invested mana in a thing that doesn't do anything anymore, obviously because it's gone. But this overall is really good. Like, just making a creature is solid. And then you pay, so even if you take the next turn off, if you don't have a good 3 mana thing to play, you're at least attacking with a 3/3. Oh, wait. Whenever. Oh, put a plus. It's just a target attacking creature. It's not every creature. So, yeah, but even then, it's just one creature every turn. But that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. This one's pretty good. This one's pretty good. Do they stack with multiple copies? Yes, because each one's going to have its own levels and its own triggers. So, if you have multiples, you get to put 2 counters on a thing. It's like, yeah, I'm good with it. This is cool. Yeah, that one's really good. Then we get into the gold cards. And I think this is going to start getting us toward the end. We have a little ways to go here, y'all. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes in. Are y'all still good with this? Do you wish to continue? we're going. I mean, we've already been live for 4 hours today almost. This is crazy. No, you can't activate the same level multiple times, but you can have multiple ranger class. All right. Let's go with Tiamat. Man, this is going to be such a long video for me to load to YouTube. I'm going to hate myself waiting for it to load. But that's okay. It'll give me a break for a while. All right, so Tiamat, by the way, has sweet alternate art. Like, this should be the regular art. Because, like, this looks like some weird thing from Cloverfield or something. Like, you can barely tell. Like, and you can kind of sort of tell that there's a different color coming out of each mouth or whatever. Like, blah. Like, not really a thing. But this is like artwork I would have on like a cool throwback poster or in a frame or something. Like this. And this is no insult to the artist, mind you. Like, the art itself is fine. But if you're going to do like a big epic dragon like Tiamat, this is what you want to have. This is what you want. Like, this is cool. But anyway, card itself. It's 2 colorless and Wooburg. 1 of each color. Legendary creature, Dragon God. Flying. When Tiamat enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tiamat that each have different names. Reveal them, put them in your hand. Shuffle, it's a 7/7. You're paying 7 mana for a 7/7. It's 5 colors. You go get a bunch of dragons. Like, I mean, this feels like it's Commander fun. You know, it's... The thing for me is that you're going to be building... Like, if you're building something that's playing, let's assume, at least 2 copies of Tiamat, you'll want, I'm assuming, like, at least 8 or 9 different dragons, so you can max out what you get to draw. But even then, that's a lot of high-end cards to have that you may not be able to cast, or if they gum up your hand. So I don't think this is necessarily a 60-card deal. I was thinking about Reanimate, but it even says if you cast it. So if you cast it, you don't get anything. Doesn't have Trample or anything else. It's just flying for that cost. So yeah, I don't know. It's neat, but not what I would be looking to play. I think it's kind of tough because Tiamat's a sweet card, really important, big dragon in D&D, but I'm not big on that. And I'm not big on 5-color commander either. So I'm already kind of being unfair to this card, I think. Uh, but if you're into 5-color commander and you want to play a theme deck with all dragons, this is a new option. You know, I think before people were playing like the Dragon or something, but like this is something else you could play. But man, it's cool that Tiamat's on a card though. I think it's really awesome. Just unfortunately, I sort of wish it did something else. I would have been more excited if this was like still needs to be 5 colors to cast. So like let's say maybe it was like a 6 mana 6/6 flying, but maybe when it came into play, it did like a basic thing from each color. Like maybe it like drew 1 card, dealt 3 damage to a target, destroyed an artifact or enchantment. You know, I don't know, like your opponent discards 2 cards, you know, whatever. Like did something crazy, like that would be really cool, and still make it if you cast it, so it has to be played from hand or something. But as it is, it's just kind of like, all right, I pay 7 for this thing. I do get to load my hand with a bunch of dragons, but then like, what if Tiamat just dies? So now I have to spend next turn just playing another dragon, and like, no, even changelings, I don't like the changelings aren't big enough or good enough to justify wanting to put those in my hand. So yeah, I don't know. Tiamat sadly doesn't excite me. I was hoping it was going to be better, but does not tick my boxes. All right, y'all. I'm just going to be up front and tell you the rest of this video got corrupted. So I'm going to have to give you an abridged version of the last like 20 cards here. Because it was like 30 to 40 minutes, maybe longer, of footage that just I couldn't recover. I tried doing about 3 different things over the course of the last about 3 hours and nothing. So I'm just going to give you what I got here. So these are going to be pretty quick and short just so I can get these done because I still have other things I got to finish, but I wanted to make sure I got this video out to you. So Xanathar, Guild Kingpin. It's a 6 mana 5/6, which is great. I think these are in... These 2 colors generally want these type of effects, so I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The downside for me is that when I reread this, you know, at the beginning of upkeep, choose target opponent. Until in the turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library. At any time, you may play the top card of their library. And you may spend mana as though it was mana of any color to cast it. The good part about this card is you can manipulate your opponent's draw step and leave them with junk on top effectively. However, if it's not a card you want to play necessarily on that turn, you don't get the opportunity to maybe like play it during their upkeep and cause them some type of problem or whatever, right? So that's a little bit of a downside because you have to do it all on your turn, which isn't bad. It's still worth doing. Just one of those things to think about. Is it a type of card that I think every deck wants to play that plays blue and black? Not really, not necessarily. I mean, 6 is a lot to dedicate to a 5/6 body, but 5/6 is very large. Very good card. I will say that if you play this kind of back-to-back with something like an Ashiok, that could be pretty powerful. But I'll be interested to see what comes out in the fall set that kind of fits into the blue-black scheme alongside this. But this is a good top-end card, a good finisher. I would not be surprised if some decks that play blue and something or black and something that maybe are playing some amount of treasure or something else or whatever find a way to squeeze this in as well, even as maybe the only off-color card. All right, moving along, we're going to get right into the next one, which is Skeletal Swarming. I kind of like this card if there's enough skeletons to support it. Like right now, you could technically be running a skeleton in every turn and generating 2 2/1s effectively, but they'll be attacking for the number of other skeletons you control, so like that's fine. Probably good enough to see some amount of play. Not bad as a control, I guess, thing, but the problem is you can't really block with them, right? They have to attack every turn. So 5 mana enchantment. Each skeleton you control has trample, attacks each combat if able, gets +X/+0, where X is the number of other skeletons you control. At the beginning of your end step, create a tapped 1/1 black skeleton creature token. If a creature you control died this turn, create a copy, 2 copies instead. If you're able to play other skeletons of any variety, like then this actually gains a lot of value. If you're able to duplicate tokens or not, that creates a lot of value. Also, if you have these in multiples, because each one would also have a trigger, then it becomes better. So by itself, just in a vacuum, not great. If the rest of the deck is built around skeletons, or you also have the ability to play multiples of these, then I think it has some extra value. But right out the gate, I wouldn't necessarily go spending cards on it because it's going to have to be a very specific deck to make use of it. Next card, Minx. This card is quirky. Beloved Ranger, it's Naya mana, red, green, not 9, but Naya mana, red, green, white for 3/3. Legendary creature human. When Minx enters the battlefield, create, boom, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. You can also pay X until end of turn. Target creature you control has base power and toughness, and becomes a giant in addition to its other creature types. Activate only as a sorcery. You know, I think this is one that like you can play, but you have to kind of think about it, right? You can. Now, when we were talking about the Bard class, where you already pay you pay a red and a green, you reduce the next card. This comes in as a 4/4 for basically 1 white, so that's pretty cool. Then you get a 1/1 token, and that's pretty cool. And then you can just pay X and keep pumping your things. So does this go in every deck? No, I do think it can go in settings where you're playing the Bard thing. If you have some ability to make white mana, I do think it fits pretty comfortably into already existing Naya decks, like the Naya Adventures and stuff like that, because it can also pump your flyers and other things that are sneaking through, and it just scales very well, right? Paying X and turning something into a big XX thing is pretty good. Downside, you have to do it as a sorcery, kind of keeps it balanced. But getting 4 mana or 4 power at a minimum for 3 mana and upside, not bad at all, really. And one of your creatures has haste. So something to think about. Pretty decent card. I wouldn't say great because it has to go in some pretty particular decks. But I do actually like what it's trying to do. Volos. Guide to Monsters. 2 green, blue, 3/2. Human Wizard. Whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control, or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. Honestly, I don't like this one. Short version is 1, it's already 2 creature types. So if you have anything else that's a human or a wizard, you don't really benefit from it. Mill still looks like it's going to be somewhat of a thing. So if they put, like say you have 4 copies of a thing in your graveyard or in your deck, well, they put one of them into the graveyard where your next one doesn't make the copy. It counts stuff both in play and in the graveyard, which is pretty difficult. It's only a 2 toughness creature, 3/2 for 4 mana. It doesn't really fit into any existing things. So there may be a world where this is something you want to play, or some other card comes out that you want to take advantage of. But this would be hard to even take advantage of in Commander. Whereas I guess you can do it in Commander, and you can play it along other cards that have similar effects. But being able to play cards that have no shared creature types is pretty tough. So I don't think I'm looking to build with this one right out of the gate. Next up, we have Orcus. Sorry y'all missed my giant explanation on this on my stream, because it was really good, and I can't really go into that right now and fill this in. But I will just say this. Orcus, really good. Insanely good. Enough that I'm probably going to buy a playset right now at $5 and feel pretty happy about it. I don't need a playset. I'll probably need 2 or 3 of them in paper. But the truth is this. This card is good in casual. It's good in Commander. It's good in Standard. It's a 4... okay. Ignore the X. Just straight up, you have a 4 mana, 2 colorless, a red and a black, for a 5/3 flying trampling demon. It's legendary, but whatever. So a 5/3 flying trample for 4. That's already a reasonable card. That is actually already borderline playable on its own, right? So now you add the X in. You get your choice of either every other creature gets -X, which means you could -2 or -3, so you do this for 6 or 7 mana, and you sweep the board, and then you have the only thing out there. Or maybe you save your other big creatures, and you get rid of all the small things. Or you can return up to X target creatures from your graveyard with combined mana value of X or less, and they gain haste. So let's say you do pay 7 or 8, right? Which is reasonable. That's a number you can get to. You can take any number of cards that have converted mana cost, or total mana cost, of up to 4, and they gain haste. You just get stuff back. And a lot of the decks that want these, like the Rakdos Sacrifice decks and stuff, are going to be getting back, like, I don't know, Woe Striders, you know, things like that. Or you could even get a creature and something, like, say, like a Mire Triton and Croxa, right? That's a thing. And that's reasonable to get out. And you still have a 5/3 when it's done, you know, to block with. So just tons and tons of stuff here you can do with this card. I'm really surprised it's only a rare. It feels very mythic to me. But I'm a big fan of that card. I think it's being underappreciated, undersold right now. So we've got Triumphant Adventurer, a black, a white, a 1/1 human knight, death touch. As long as it's your turn, it has first strike, and when it attacks you, venture into the dungeon. Big fan of this card. I think attacking with the 1/1 first strike death touch is great. Your opponent's almost never going to want to block it because they have to block with 2 things. So basically every time you attack, you're going to get a dungeon effect, which is pretty cool. It fits into human decks. It fits into knight decks. I'm not sure if the knight decks want it as much as the human decks in standard, but maybe. It's something we could look at. It is a rare, so that's a little bit of a downside, but the ability, the upside, if you're playing any type of adventure, or not adventure, but any type of venture mechanic stuff, it's actually pretty good. I have no complaints about it. I think that card's actually pretty solid. Adult Gold Dragon, 5 mana, so 3 colorless, red, white, 4/3. Creature Dragon. It has flying, lifelink, haste. That's it. I think this card is good. However, I don't think it can really get played until the fall. The reason being is right now, you really have 2 other things in the 5 mana slot you're fighting with. Now, outside of specialty decks where you just want to have a large variety of dragons, that's a whole different discussion. Or theme decks, right, where stuff has to have haste or whatever. But as it is, you're going to be deciding first off if you want to play this or Goldspan Dragon. Goldspan Dragon makes treasure, and there's a lot of stuff that cares about treasure. So that probably gets the nod. Then in other decks that don't necessarily care about the treasure, but the life could be relevant, you have stuff like Baneslayer Angel, right? So even if you're playing a lifelink based deck or whatever, this feels like a really good choice. But Baneslayer Angel is also just 1 color, and it also has protection from dragons and demons, which we've seen there's more of in this set. And it also has lifelink and it's 5 power, right? So, though I think this card is just fine, I think right now it's just outclassed by 2 other cards that fit more of the deck types right now. Drizzt Jordan, the spiel I gave on stream first off is just, please get it out of your system that this card should be a black card. Drizzt Jordan does not reflect the black color of Magic very well based on the character and what it does. Like, this is kind of a known thing. Let's move past that. Now, at 5 mana, you're getting 7 power worth of creatures, 3 of which double strike. Makes it a great top deck, right? You basically effectively are top decking 10 damage worth of attackers. If for some reason you just have to block, you get to block with the first striker and you get to block with the 4 power creature. And then when it dies, you get to put a +1/+1 on Drizzt, which is cool. So you're getting an attack with the double striker that's bigger. So that's pretty nice. But for 3, a green and a white, you get a 3/3 Elvish Ranger, legendary creature, double strike. When it comes into play, you make a 4/1 cap with trample. And whenever a creature dies, if its power was bigger than Drizzt's, you get to put the difference of that many counters on Drizzt. So likely, he won't ever be bigger than like a 5 or a 6. But even then, double striking is pretty sweet. Getting 2 creatures for 5 mana with that much power, that's hard to turn your nose up at, and I probably will be playing this in a few decks. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure if I'm playing those colors, there's a good chance I'm going to be looking for those, even more so if I'm playing something with like elves or whatever. The Deck of Many Things. This is something a lot of people were expecting was going to show up because it's a popular known artifact or magic item, I should say, in Dungeons and Dragons. So it's 5 colorless. For a legendary artifact, you can pay 2 and tap it, roll a d20, subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, you end up discarding your hand. If you roll a 1 to 9, return a card at random from the graveyard to your hand. A 10 to 19, you draw 2 cards. And if you roll a 20, you get to put a creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield or from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. When that creature dies, its owner loses the game. So it's a cool way to try to get an alternate win condition for your opponent, but you do have to score a 20, which is hard because your hand has to be empty and you have a 5% chance of rolling a 20. That aside, I do think this is the type of card that could end up being very good for a commander. And I know some people are saying, you're crazy, but hear me out here. It is 5 colorless, which you can do very easy in commander. You can manipulate your hand to different types depending on what you're playing. You can also manipulate your graveyard, so you're getting certain things back. So then you're effectively going to be getting a card back from your graveyard or drawing 2 cards pretty much every time you activate this for 2 mana. It's going to be some type of free card or cards every turn. I can't see why there's not some decks that are going to want this. I don't think it has a place in 60 card Magic because, 5 mana, then spending another 2, then having a random effect and having to worry about cards in your hand. This is not a thing you really get to do in 60 card Magic. It's just too many fiddly bits and it's too slow. But I think it does have a realistic shot for slower commander type formats. Hand of Vecna. 3 colorless, legendary artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, equip creature or creature you control that's named Vecna gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. You can also equip this for paying 1 life for each card in your hand or equip for 2. Now, a lot of people are saying, like, well, unless you're going to try to do the Hand of Vecna, Eye of Vecna thing, I wouldn't play this. I disagree. I think I would experiment with this because there's enough artifacts, and we talked about this earlier in the video, there's enough artifacts, equipment, and like equipment that become creatures and creatures that become equipment that you can play probably a smooth equipment deck now. If so, I would go ahead and experiment with one of these and just see how many cards you have in hand and how much that affects things. Because you do also have stuff that can search for equipment, and that's also helping load your hand. And I think that's actually totally reasonable here. I don't think it's like stellar, but the fact that you could equip for free and still take an action that turn, I think is pretty valuable, and at least worth considering in those types of decks. Again, I wouldn't go nuts on this one, but I do think it's worth a one of if you're playing that style of deck just to check it out. Here we have the Eye of Vecna. And this is one we debated a little bit on stream, and I think some people disagreed with me, so I'm willing to be wrong in this, but hear me out here. Hear me out. I have thoughts. So the Eye of Vecna, it's 2 colorless for a legendary artifact. When Eye of Vecna enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 2 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card and you lose 2 life. Now, one of the things I like about this card is that it is low cost. It's only 2. You only have to take the draw 1 time, and that's when it comes into play. That is not optional. It's mandatory. But after that, you get your choice of when you want the cards and lose a life or not. But there are a lot of cards, like if you remember that free Angel deck that they made, right? There was a lot of life linking and life gaining in there. But there's a lot of times, okay, your board gets swept. Well, now you don't have anything, and you have this like 35, 38 life just sitting there, right? Well, a card like this would be great. Just pay 2 during your upkeep, get through those extra cards, get you some options, and try to get out of trouble. There's a few decks that gain life that could really take advantage of this, and since you can choose when you lose the life, I think it's pretty fine, at least worth considering. A lot of people kind of went, oh, I guess this is a control thing. It's like, not necessarily. I think it's probably better in the slower decks that can kind of gradually gain life, but I don't think that's the only place a card like this can live. And again, I would still be willing to play this separate and not even necessarily play it with the other parts. Treasure Chest. This one's kind of easy. I'm going to give you the short version. It's bad, don't play it. It's 3 colorless for a completely random thing. You have to pay 3 to play it, and then 4 to crack it, and then you get 1 shot at maybe getting something relevant. I mean, most of the time you're either going to get treasures or you're going to gain 3, you draw 3. So I mean, I guess that's fine if you're willing to spend 7 mana for that, which, there's some upside to be said there. But nah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you play it on 3, you crack it on 4. If you get it on 3 and you're willing to crack it on 4 to get 3 treasure, or get 5 treasure and then get 3 cards, either or, like, that seems reasonable enough to be okay with, because that's a pretty fast ramp, being able to ramp up to then having 9 mana, right? So that's something to talk about. So in that regard, I think it's viable, but it's also what are you doing in those turns in between then. So my initial thought is, this is really bad. And then my other thought is like, yeah, maybe. So I'll probably try experimenting with this and just see if that advancement of cards or mana is worth it. But it's a complete gamble. You don't know which one you're getting. And that's the part that makes it tough. But hey, that's part of being in a D&D set, right? We knew that was going to be a thing. Lands. This is Treasure Vaults. Quick explanation. This is an artifact land, so something you should note. It can be destroyed by things that destroy artifacts. So if you don't crack it, there's a chance your opponent might. You can tap for colorless. You can pay XX and tap it and sacrifice it and get that many treasure tokens. Generally speaking, if you pay 6 and you get 3 treasure, you're probably ahead of where you would be over the course of a couple turns. If you only do it for 4 mana and you only get 2 treasures, not as good. So you really want to be aiming for 6+, I think, on your mana you're going to spend on it. But otherwise, I think it's pretty good if you have a deck that wants treasure or triggers from treasure coming into play or anything else. Obviously, it's going to be pretty powerful. Unfortunately, not much else to say on that particular card. This one, I felt so strong about this card, I put a TikTok out about it. This card, why? Why Wizards? Like, this is not cool. This is not cool at all. Like, it has a billion drawbacks on it. Why? Comes into play tapped. You have to pay 4 and tap it, and you have to tap another creature, and that creature has to be legendary, and it can only be played as a sorcery. It's like, come on, just to venture into the dungeon once? Like, scale any of these back and it's actually reasonable. Now it's like you only play this card specifically if you're doing the venture thing. I don't think you can play it anywhere else. And maybe that's the point. Maybe they're just trying to restrict it so like not every slow deck wants to play it. But my goodness, is it not good. I'm just going to save the time and say I'm going to show the black one, but each of these is good. There's one that's a 3/3 that removes stuff from the graveyard. There's one that's a 3/4 flyer. There's one that's a 3/2 bugbear that makes a 1/1 goblin when it attacks. And the green one is basically a hydra. It's X and becomes that big whenever it attacks. Now, the blue one, I will say, does suck. So congratulations, blue finally got a bad one in a cycle like this. Because the blue ones are always like, draw cards, or scry something, or do whatever, right? Like, this one actually is, you pay 6 and you make a 7/7. With Ward 3. So it's hard to kill, but it's just a 7/7 and it's 6 mana. Some control decks would probably still play that because it's a guaranteed creature that you can play late that's hard to deal with. But ultimately, I don't think it's what blue wants. You're likely going to be splashing, playing blue-white, blue-black, something like that. And you're more likely to play the other lands from the other colors, I think, at that point. But yeah, these lands, all playable. The blue one is even playable. It's just not great by comparison to the others. And then there are the dungeons, but I don't think we're really going to talk about the dungeons too much. We'll cover those on probably another video. All right, I swear, if you made it this far, you are a trooper. You are one of the best members of the Brood for getting through 3 hours of listening to me talk about Forgotten Realms cards. Let me know down in the comments if you like these types of videos or these types of full reviews, or if they need to be broken into smaller chunks or whatever. Just looking for feedback. This is the first time we've done this for a full set, and it was kind of fun, but I don't know if people really want this long of a YouTube video, or if you want to come back and watch it in parts, or I don't know. But the more feedback I can get, the better, and I'd be super appreciative. Also, again, don't forget, hopefully by now, if you watched all this and liked the info, you've already hit the like and subscribe button, because again, it's my birthday. Help me out. But yeah, hit those buttons, and then, you know, don't forget to check out my other stuff, because I have a bunch of other things. If you want to come and be part of these streams, especially when we're doing stuff like this, if you want to ask particular questions or get certain stuff taken care of, deck lists, whatever, you can always do that on my streams and on my Discord. Those links are down below as well. And again, you know, like, subscribe, notification bell, all that stuff. And that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.